Well, welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And this week is our version of 20 questions, because that's how many we actually have, except ours have multiple parts, like A through H, I think one of them goes. So we're going to try to hustle. That's what we're going to try to do.
Yeah, that always works
So
out
says
well
me.
for us. Yes, that's clearly us hustling is the issue here, not the long-wittedness of an individual on the podcast, just whose name will never be mentioned, but his initials are Robbie.
We both fit that.
That is true. I we postponed the podcast for a day because I thought last night I was going to go climbing, and it was Memorial Day, but then they closed the climbing gym, and I live in Florida where there is nothing else to climb other than overpasses, and they frown on that. Take my word for it. So instead, just kind of had a nice, relaxing Memorial Day with my wife, which was good. It was also a good Memorial Day weekend because last weekend was her birthday, and apparently I did nothing she wanted to do. So she did everything. She's like, this week, and we're going to do all the stuff that I wanted to do for my birthday weekend. I'm like, Tom, fail. Don't really care, but I failed. So we went tubing, and we went to the beach, and we did all this outdoorsy crap that does not in any way involve the home theater. But the upside was that Deadpool came out on Blu-ray. I bought it, and I've watched it 3 times since then.
Hooray!
None of those times did I end up completely sober by the end. I will say that much.
That's an appropriate movie for that. Deadpool would approve.
I think Deadpool would approve of that. This is AV Rant, the podcast where we answer your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. Email us at question@avrant.com. That's our main question line. You can email that, and it will get onto the question list. You can also CC Rob at avrant.com and Tom at avrant.com if you so wish. You can go to www.avrant.com, our website, and leave a comment there. Facebook.com/avrant podcast, where we are very active, and as are our listeners. So your question will at least be acknowledged by somebody, oftentimes answered before we even get a chance to look at it. Twitter at First Reflect for Rob, at avrant_Tom for me, and at Austen Austen for our producer Austen. He's the one who puts together all our question lists. He also has his own podcast, We Watch Movies. It is a podcast. I have nothing for this week. Let me hold on a second. I'll come up with something.
You mean it's not always the same thing every week? We watch movies?
No.
You're
not this week.
It is actually behind the curtain.
But the thing about this podcast is that I forgot what they changed it to. It used to be about watching movies. Now it is not. It is about, I believe, if I remember correctly, they have switched the topic quite dramatically to manila envelopes.
Okay.
Manila envelopes.
Yep.
Sizes, which are the best sealing and all that. Sealing mean they seal well. Whether or not to use a little tabby thingy, the middle tab, or not, apparently that's a big thing.
I like the ones that are like a sticker. You don't have to lick them anymore.
I do approve of those, especially if you're doing bulk.
One-time use, though. One-time use.
Yeah, that is true. They're all one-time bleeds. Let's be honest. You lick the thing, you're never gonna. I mean, first of all, no one's gonna re-lick it after it's been licked. Second of all, I don't even know if that would work. But we should ask them. We watch movies.
That's right. Yeah, podcast. We watch movies. Yeah.
All right. This week we're going to thank our listeners of the week. This week we have Andy and Derek to thank. Andy and Derek went to www.avrant.com. They clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and they were led to a PayPal donation page where they gave us a PayPal donation. That donation goes into the AV Rant coffers to pay for hosting and other various and sundry costs that maintain this podcast. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, Andy, Derek, thank you both for your donations. Very much.
Remember, it is a PayPal donation. We have no control over it whatsoever, which means you can use your PayPal account or a credit card. And,
you good. Don't have to sign up for PayPal.
That's right. We also want to thank Fabrico. Is that what we're going with?
I think it's Fabricio.
Fabricio. I like that better.
I think so.
Fabricio bought a SVS PC 2000 during SVS's Memorial Day outlet store sale and let them know it was because of us. We always love it when people support the podcast in any way they can, monetarily or otherwise. And Fabricio found a non-monetary way to support us by talking us up to manufacturers. So thank you, Fabricio.
Yes, thanks so much. And yeah, SVS definitely knows about us. We've
They
had
have
their
heard that our name
had
has
their
come
president
across,
on
come
the
across their
podcast a
desk.
couple times. Yeah, and yeah, they respond nicely on Twitter, so that's a nice place.
They do. They are. Now, in the news, I think we talked about this already a little bit, so we'll just brush through it real quick.
Yeah.
Emotiva has announced their technology enhancements for the XMC-1 to add HDMI 2.0 and HDCP 2.2 support, only on one HDMI output and one HDMI input.
Yeah.
So there's that, as well as Dolby Atmos and DTS decoding. The enhancements will come in the form of completely replacing the HDMI and/or processor decoding boards. It's a little weird because the release of the HDMI board is slated for midsummer. It will be free to XMC-1 owners who purchase their units at full price, retail price, which is $2,500, anytime before the new boards become available, and for $299 to anyone who bought it at a discounted price or used. I do like that they are supporting the used market. I think that's very good.
Yeah.
So, the decoder board is slated for Q1 of 2017.
Yeah. I read. Good luck. We'll see. I'll believe it when I see it.
It's not. It's just historic. It's not that we don't love Emotiva. We love Emotiva, but historically, they are like technically my sister-in-law, who we say has her own clock, which does not necessarily sync up with other people's clocks. So when she says she'll be there at X time, what she means is that she may or may not be there at all. And if she comes, that time may or may not correspond with the time she has promised. And that's the way Emotiva is with their dates, generally speaking. Anywho, the decoder board, Q1 2017-ish, and it will cost around $500. Not around, it will cost $499, regardless of when or for what price you bought your XMC-1. They will also be offering the new XMC-1 Generation 3 unit with Atmos DTS X for basically $3,000, which is the price of this.
So I mean, the reason we're bringing this up again is because now it's official. It's like on their website as a splash page. It's right there when you go there. So it's very much official. They've announced pricing, which we didn't know previously. And more than that, they did say that the Atmos DTS X update, they figured out a way to allow for a full 7.2.4 setup. Previously, we thought it was going to be limited to 5.2.4 or 7.2.2. They said, no, they can use like, I think it's like the record out line. They like the Zone 2. So they repurpose them so they can do full 7.2.4, they say. I
imagine that's going to involve a sticker on the back of the
something like
receiver.
That. And they made it very clear that you could get the DTS X and Atmos upgrade separate from the HDMI upgrade, because the HDMI 2.0 with HDCP 2.2 upgrade, that's all about being able to pass 4K video. It has nothing to do with audio capabilities. If you're not going to have an Ultra HD Blu-ray player or a 4K source,
or you're going to buy a unit that has two HDMI outputs, you're just going to run it straight to the TV anyways.
That's right. Yeah. Then you can leave the HDMI 1.4 ports that are already on the XMC-1 and only pay for the Atmos and DTS X upgrade. So you don't have to get them both together. So that's the news.
Yeah, that at first that kind of took me aback. I was like, "What? You can get the audio without the?" It kind of makes sense, but then again, the only one that you really technically need to use 4K, if you had a 4K player and a 4K TV and you want to use your XMC, the only thing you really need is the Atmos stuff, and that's the one that costs $5. The other one's basically free if you bought it.
Nice that it's a processor that can genuinely be upgraded. So
that's
good on
nice. Good. All right, via John on Twitter, he says Samsung will skip OLED TVs and go straight to QLED TVs, hopefully by 2019. I kind of believe Samsung when they come up with a date like that, but maybe not.
Yeah, they're an aggressive company, so
they are. Yeah. And I used to love their plasma, so whatever. With a QLED TV, LEDs activate quantum dots, with the quantum dots acting as the pixels themselves, so it's a self-emissive display.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things they're talking about when you look at this, first of all, it's translated from I don't know what, in Japanese or something. Korean. That makes sense. That Samsung's a Korean company. And they are talking about how OLEDs have burn-in problems and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, here we go. That was the first thing I thought. Like, really, we're going to go down this path again with
Yeah.
burn-in and this and that, and
No, I
ours
mean,
are better because of that. And
this is really saying, because Samsung did one model year release their own large format OLED TV, but theirs was red, green, blue. So it was individual OLED, little LEDs down there, that red, green, blue for each subpixel. Whereas LG's version, which is the only game in town now, basically uses a white OLED with filters in front of it to create the colors. So they call it a WRGB. So LG's process, it's much higher yields, it's much more stable. It just works a lot better and it's less expensive. So this is basically Samsung saying, yeah, we're kind of abandoning the version that we had, where there's no way that we're ever going to pay LG to license their technology like a lot of other companies are, because those two are major rivals with one another. So like, yep, forget OLED. Now we're going to try to badmouth it and then tell everybody to wait for 3 more years because we got something better coming. But at the same time, QLED makes a whole lot of sense because right now we are using quantum dots in a lot of displays, but we're just using them as a backlight. This idea is individual quantum dots could act as the subpixels themselves, which makes a whole lot of sense. And yeah, should be good.
Yeah. That's exactly what we need, is more wars about things. We already have LED and then OLED, which will be competing with each other, and now we're going to have this. That's just fantastic. Yep. Whatever. All right, comments from I guess from Austen. Oh, Gary has one too. From Austen, producer. I guess noted that. Did we say something about a metric ton of pennies?
Oh yeah, we were saying it. It was Steve who didn't want to spend a ton on headphones, and you were like, "Wow, a literal ton." So Austen looked up how much a ton of money actually would be.
So a ton of U.S. pennies would be $4,000. Yeah. One penny equals 2.5 grams, not grams, which would indeed be a ton of money to spend on headphones. So if you wanted to spend $4,000 in penny.
There are headphones more expensive than that.
Oh yeah, so, you can spend as much as you want on anything you want
easily.
Infinite Gary also pointed out to us that pointed us to the Dolby Institute Podcast Series, which may be of interest to the AV Rec crowd.
Yeah, and a really quick little listen, and these are like sort of behind the scenes. They actually talk to like recording engineers, movie sound mixers, movie sound editors, people like that, and get sort of their behind the scenes. They did a whole series on like all of the Oscar contenders from this past year, so it's kind of it's kind of neat. It's nice to hear these guys talk about their craft and get sort of a behind the scenes look that you aren't always privy to. So good series.
All right, from last week, Robert. I guess you're putting a picture up. Are you doing that right now?
Oh, it's going to come in just a moment. Give me 1 second. And boom. If you're watching the YouTube video, you should be able to see.
Anyways, if you're not, don't worry. We'll describe it to you. Robert bought a Marantz SR6010 AVC receiver, the less expensive than its Denon counterpart in Australia for some reason. And now he'd like to install 5.2.4 Atmos DTS X system. He already has the 5.2 speakers set up. He's sitting a little over 9 feet away from a 10-inch screen. His room is roughly 16.5 by 17.5 feet wide. He already bought 2 pairs of in-ceiling speakers, so he's only concerned about placement for now. All right. Let me see here. Let's look at this. And for those of you that are looking, it's blurry. But anyways, it'll come in. It's just bandwidth. There it goes. So it's in sort of like is there a kitchen thing going on here? Is that what this is?
No, it's I mean, it's a fairly thing. So we got some pictures down below, so you can see his front wall there and sides
so it's hardwood floors. It's basically rectangular with a little bit of a jut out for the door. So think of this mostly rectangular. The couch is sort of in the center, maybe a little bit past the midpoint away from the front wall. The projectors are right on the back wall, basically. Could have built a shelf for that, but he's got a nice little thing. He's got a drop screen that goes in front of an AC unit and a flat panel of some sort. And all of that. So there you go. You just went black. Oh, you're back again.
Okay.
All right. All right,
his video is front so stable.
I know, right? His front left and right speakers are 8.5 feet apart, since they are directly to either side of his projection screen, so a little bit wider than they normally would be because of the projection screen. He thinks he would actually prefer them a bit closer together, but that's not an option. Should he keep his 2 pairs of overhead speakers the same distance apart, or could he have them a little closer together? And what effect would that have on the sound? So Dolby says, if we remember, that your front left and right and your surround back speakers should be like facing each other almost, right?
Yeah, they should be in a line. They should be
line.
The same width apart. Yeah.
And therefore, all the overhead speakers should be going on the ceiling in that same line.
Yeah, so front, left, and right, top, front, top, rear, and surround backs, all of them are the same distance apart from left to right.
And honestly, I'm sure that that's the best way to do it. But if he wants to put them a little closer together, I'm thinking that the difference is really going to be negligible as far as sound. I don't know that it's going to make a humongous difference. But that being said, I mean, why? This is supposed to be, if anything, if I were putting overhead speakers in, I would think to myself, I might want to have them a little further apart than they're actually directed, because I want it to be more diffuse. I don't want it to be too directive. But I think that where you have your speakers is not too far apart. I think they're just fine, especially considering the size of your couch, and that you should keep them in line with your front speakers.
Yeah, I completely agree, because Dolby makes their recommendations based off of angles. And for them, they're saying your front, left, and right speakers should be anywhere from 22.5 degrees left and right of center out to 30 degrees left and right of center. And in this case, when he's sitting, what is it, about 8.5 feet? Or no, he's a little more than he's 9 feet away. Yeah. If you work out the angles, then right now where he has them being about 8.5 feet apart, he's basically created 25 degrees left and right of center, which is totally within that range that Dolby recommended. So, I mean, he could, if he wanted to, if he were able to with the screen, he could move them closer together, as close as 7.6 feet apart. That would give him the 22.5 degrees left and right of center, or as far apart as 10.6 feet, which seems actually pretty darn wide, but they could be that wide apart and still fall within the Dolby guidelines. But right now he's at 25 degrees plus or minus. So there's really no reason to move them in or out, and there's no reason to not have the overhead speakers still in line with them. It all works within Dolby's suggestions completely.
I wonder why he thinks that he would like them closer together. I'm wondering.
I'm guessing it's because of the flat panel. When he's watching the flat panel that's behind his retractable screen, then it seems as though the left and right speakers are a little bit wide apart, but that's where they're more or less supposed to be.
Did he tell us what speakers he has? Is it down here?
It's in there somewhere.
We'll get to it. Anyways,
it's B&W, Bowers and Wilkins M1 speakers are what he's using there.
I'm wondering if for some reason these are getting swallowed up by the room a little bit. You know, he does have a fairly reflective room. I'm wondering if these speakers are getting a little swallowed up by the room, and putting them together makes them sound more coherent, but really it's not the speakers as much as it's the room, but we'll get to that. All right, his ceiling is a little less than 8 feet high, and when he's sitting, his ears are about 5 feet from the ceiling. He was thinking of putting one pair of overhead speakers 3.5 feet in front of him, and the second pair 3.5 feet behind him. It worked it out, and that seems like those positions would create 35-degree elevation angles. Is that correct? Would that mean he should call them front heights and rear heights?
Yes, because Dolby, again, says if your elevation angle is between 30 and 45 degrees, that would be called a height speaker as opposed to a top speaker. However, the way they work out the angles is in Dolby's frame of reference, they have you sit down, look straight ahead, and they call that 0 degrees elevation. And 90 degrees elevation would be straight over your head. So in this case, where he's worked out the math, it's actually a 55-degree elevation angle, because he's worked out, that it's 3.5 feet in front of him. So he worked out the angle between what Dolby calls 90 degrees.
Right, and then
how far ahead. Yeah, so it's 35 degrees angle if you were starting with 0 being straight up.
Right.
But it's 55-degree elevation angle if you're starting with 0 being parallel to the floor. So that's the way Dolby references it. So if he used these positions, it would be at 55-degree elevation angles. You would definitely call those top speakers, top front and top rear, if he were to use those.
Yeah, which would be perfectly fine. I think that's probably where I put them anyways, to be honest with you.
Well, I have a slightly different thought, but it goes into the next question.
All right. So do we have any recommendations for better placement? He doesn't really have any obstacles to be concerned about in the ceiling, so his options are quite open. It just wants the best placement for the best experience.
Right. So my thought on this is, since he has an SR6010, which tops out at 9 speakers max, and he does not have any surround back speakers, I would suggest actually moving the ones that are behind him a little farther back.
I could get behind that. For
sure. Yeah. So I was saying maybe have them at like 1.5 meters. He put all these things in meters, but basically like 5 feet behind him. And to me, that gives you a little bit more sense that, those are definitely behind me as opposed to above me. And so he's like, yeah, that's totally doable, having them 1.5 meters behind him. And if you do that, then you could move the ones that were going to be 3.5 feet in front of you. You could move those a little bit closer to the seat if you wanted to, maybe only like 3 or 2.5 feet in front of you. And that way you could maybe call them top middles or top fronts. But honestly, 3.5 feet in front of you is fine. So the only thing I would recommend is maybe moving the ones behind you back a bit farther, because you don't have any surround back speakers.
Yeah, we've dealt with this. Have we dealt with this room before? I feel like we've dealt with this room before.
But it wasn't in an Atmos sense. So
yeah, we were talking about putting surround backs, I thought, in this room. We were. Okay. Yeah, so, okay. Yeah. So would you call them surround backs, or would you call them rear heights?
I'd call them rear heights at that point.
Okay. That makes sense.
And what was interesting is just recently, Craig Eggers, who's a representative for Dolby and does a lot of their public speaking in that, he actually sort of went on record saying Dolby's official recommendation now, if you're going to go for the whole 9-speaker setup instead of an 11-speaker setup, is to go with a 5.2.4, but basically call what's behind you rear heights, right? So instead of having 7.1 where you have surround backs and then say top middles, he's like, nah, call them rear heights and then have top middles or top fronts, because that lets the renderer do a better job of steering sounds around you.
Yeah.
That's just the way that the render,
I bet mine are,
Dolby works.
Mine are elevated probably 2.5, 3 feet above my head, and way, and 6 feet behind me. I bet I could call those rear heights too.
Yeah, so honestly, it all works out quite well. So I've suggested moving back a bit farther. That puts you within the angle range where they could be called rear heights. That's what Dolby's basically recommending now if you use a 9-speaker setup. So I think we're very much in the ballpark of good advice on this now.
All right, since the 6010 only has 7 amps built in, he plans on getting an external amp at some point. But for now, he's thinking of he'd use his old Pioneer VSX S300 receiver to just power 2 extra speakers. Is that okay? Any problems he might face doing that? It is perfectly fine. It is cumbersome. It is cumbersome. Because, just, and it's space intensive for 2 channels worth of amplification. But yeah, you just put them through the the whatever. I guess you can really
any stereo
input if you're only doing 2. Switch it to that stereo input, put it on pure direct, and then you have to deal with the volume issue.
Yeah, the only thing is the volume, which actually will come up on the next question. But yeah, in general, if you could have the master volume set to 0 dB, like I would actually kind of recommend doing like a full factory reset on the thing. Just put everything back to defaults, then set it to pure direct mode, set it on the one input where you're going to have it plugged in from the pre-outs that are coming from the 6010. And then if you could have the master volume set to 0 dB and give it a try, because on many receivers, especially lower cost receivers, when you have their master volume set to 0 dB, sometimes the noise floor does get up to where it's audible. And if that's the case, then back it down, just a couple of dB until you don't have that noise floor hiss anymore. But
because you can correct for that in your second receiver, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And then you've basically just using that older receiver, that less expensive one, as a dumb amplifier, which is exactly what you want. Yeah.
All right, since last week he took a first stab at the 5.2.4 setup, he wound up leaving the Pioneer's master volume at -5 dB. That was mainly because it would always automatically reverted to that level when he turns it off and back on.
Yeah.
Is there any way to fix that?
So I went through the manual on that, because he says Pioneer's VSX 300. I read through the manual. Like on many receivers, there's actually an option inside of the menu to say what volume do you want this unit to turn on. Like you can say turn on to wherever it was set last, which is what a lot of people like. Or a lot of them actually do let you select a level so that every time you cycle the power, it comes back on at a set level. Well, I read through the manual. Maybe it's in there, but it wasn't listed anywhere in the manual. Apparently, this is just the default for what this thing does. Is every time you turn it off,
actually
you turn it back on.
Fine for his application.
It is. It's fine.
It's fine. -5 dB, whatever, close enough. So you can correct that on the other end.
Yeah.
So Odyssey wound up setting his top fronts to -3 dB, but his top rears, which are the ones powered by the Pioneer, to +9 dB. It sounds fine, but is there any reason to be concerned about such a large trim level difference? No.
I mean, you're within the range that the SR6010 allows. I mean, if
it's usually ±12 dB, I think.
Yeah, with plus or minus 12. So that's fine. We would expect the ones in the back, because he did move them farther back, as I suggested. So we'd expect them to be a little bit quieter anyway. And then you're essentially losing 5 decibels of gain because that's where the Pioneer that he's just using as an amp always turns on. Yeah. So all of this is sort of within the expected range, and it's not falling outside of the range of what the Marantz can do to compensate. So you're fine.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Whenever you see something along these lines, the only time you need to be worried is when you're outside of the range of what the
if you
receiver
hit minus
can
or
do.
plus 12, then you've got
or 10. With some receivers, it's 10, but you just have to look to make sure that what it is. But yeah, Odyssey also insisted that his center and top rear speakers are out of phase. He triple checked and they're wired correctly. He told Odyssey to ignore it. It sounds fine, but it's bothering Robert in the back of his mind. Yeah, Robert, this goes to your room. Yep. I think this has happened to me in the past, and it will tell me that my speakers are wired out of phase, and it's not. And it is a reflection in your room. As the sound bounces around your room, it hits the mic again, and the mic says, "Whoa, okay," or Odyssey says, "Well, okay, that sounds out of phase. I think that's out of phase." And what that is a reflection. If you know that your speakers are wired in phase, it's the room.
Right. And it could also be a microphone placement issue.
Yeah, but again, it's the room.
Just to cover our bases and for other listeners who might run into this, if you have the microphone too close to the back of your chair, sometimes that's the thing causing the reflection that makes it think that it's out of phase. So make sure that you have at least 1 foot of free space all around the microphone when you're doing the setup. And if you've done that and you still get this message, then it's most likely reflections in your room.
Yeah. So lastly, he asked, would renaming the top fronts and top rears to top middles and rear heights make any difference? Well, it's going to make a difference as to what sounds get placed where in those speakers. So you don't want to do that unless they're actually in the place that they're supposed to be for those labels. The labels are really to let the receiver know in what general vicinity your speakers are placed. Yeah. So if you start changing the labels based on, I would like to have middles, even though these are not placed in the middle spot, I'm going to call them middles anyways because that makes me happy on the inside. Well, it might make you happy on the inside, but it's going to make the receiver do things it's not supposed to be doing. So instead of panning that sound that's supposed to be directly over your head or very close to over your head between your top front and your top rears in a way to put it where it should be, it's going to say, oh, well, that's a top middle. I'll just play it all from that speaker or 90% of it from that speaker, which is going to put that sound that should be fairly close to right above you or maybe a little bit in front of you. That's going to place that sound far in front of you, far further than it should be. So that's why you don't want to do something like that.
Yeah, and when he has that top rear set now about 5 feet behind him, and he's got a distance of about 5 feet from his head to the ceiling, that basically means that speaker's at about a 45-degree elevation angle, which means you could call it rear height or top rear. Both that angle falls within the range allowable for either of those labels, so that doesn't really make a difference. No. You could call them either, and it's going to do a fine job of steering that. The ones that are 3 to 3.5 feet in front of you, those should be called top fronts. That falls within that angle range. It does not fall within the angle range of a top middle speaker. So wherever the angles are that the speakers physically fall, whatever that range happens to be, that's the label you should use. But yeah, you have a choice on those rear ones, and it honestly won't make much of a difference back there.
All right. Last question that was left over from last week, I guess, is Dorsal over on Facebook asked us, Dorsal. He has a 7.2 setup in what appears to be a very small room using clip bookshelf speakers, holy moly, and 2 BIC subwoofers. He'd like to upgrade the subwoofers, and he's considering the SVS PB2000 or even the PB13 Ultra. But given the size of his room, would the PB2000 be too much? Do we have any other suggestions? Now, Dorsal, since long before Rob's sultry voice ever came upon this podcast, I have been giving one piece of advice to people who are buying subwoofers on the internets. Make yourself a box, sir.
Yes.
You have to make yourself a box, because if you're in a small room and you think that PB2000, much less the PB13 Ultra, is going to fit in there, sir. Because now there's a video on there. I don't know if it shows up for everybody, but we can watch it. A video sort of showing his room a little bit, and it is very small. I mean, and that's not an insult. I don't want you to get bent out of shape about it. It's fine. In fact, that's going to be great for bass. And any of these would technically work. Because all you got to do is that PB13 Ultra, you would just take the knob and go, it's on. That's it. That's as much.
Okay, that's enough. Whoop, 1 or 2. Yeah.
One, maybe 0.5. Yeah. I would actually be afraid that you couldn't turn it low enough. You might run into a problem.
Then it would be too much sub at that point.
Could possibly be too much sub. But the PB2000 would probably be fine. That being said,
you do not need it.
You do not need this in this room. You need us. I think that what you should be looking at is the sealed box versions of these subwoofers. Yeah. Even the SB1000. Do they have an SB1000?
There's an SB1000. Yeah.
I would just annihilate, especially compared to a BIC. And I got nothing against BIC subwoofers. So they're perfectly fine starter subs. And you've started. Let's move on. So the SB1000s would crush that one. The SB2000s could cause structural damage.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, and physically they would fit a lot better being a 14.5-inch cube. That I could see fitting in that room. The PB13 Ultra, you could put a couple in there. You just have to sit on them or use them as your,
they would be your furniture, sir. They would be your furniture.
There's nowhere to put that thing. It is huge. Yes,
it is
please
massive.
Make yourself a scale model.
There's a PB. There's the PB2000, the PB SB2000. I think that's a video that we did for Audioholics with what's his name, Andrew Gash, a million years ago. You can see how the difference in size. Yeah. It's massive.
Now,
it's a massive difference in size.
I did talk to him a little bit on Facebook, and one of the things he's after is like really subsonic things, and he's looking at like the SB2000, and it says it plays down to 19 hertz, and then falls off from there. And he's like, oh, he wants to get into like single digits if he can. So. Look, I don't think that's important to do. I want to throw that out there. But if you're the person who wants to do that, I will mention HSU. They do have their ULS 15. It's now a Mark II version, but it's a sealed sub. It's like an 18-inch cube, so it's not super tiny, but it's still much smaller than the PB13 Ultra is. But if you want to do that, that thing can play down to the 10 hertz region. So and it costs about the same as the 2000 series subs from SVS. So I threw that out there. He kind of went for it. He kind of liked it. So I know what he's after.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Yeah, this is what it comes down to. I mean, if you really want this kind of bass, it's perfectly fine. What you're going to do is raise your entire home theater up about, or their floor up about 18 inches. And you're just going to buy two PB1000s and Ultra 13s, whatever. You're gonna seat and submersives or something massive, and you're just gonna like build your entire home theater on top of them, because that's what you're gonna have to. But you will get down there. They'll be like an infinite baffle sub almost. You could do that, I guess. If you're really into that sort of thing. All right, new for this week, we have Tyler. This is new for this weekend that we answered the wrong question last week. Austen completely misread Tyler's email about the JVC Wobble K projectors. He even got the name of the podcast, Tyler. You even got the name of the podcast. You're going to come complaining to us. Anyways, which caused Tom and Rob to completely not answer his actual question. What he wanted to know was not about resolution, but HDR and color gamut. So in those terms, how much would he be missing if he saved $2,000 by going with the JVC DLA-X550R over the DLA-X750R? He's read that the 550 can basically produce the Adobe RGB color gamut, while the X750 and 950 can do Rec 2020. Is that correct?
So that's not quite right, but going by the detailed reviews that were on projectorreviews.com, because they reviewed, now JVC has both a JVC Consumer and a JVC Pro series, so they reviewed the Pro series versions, but they are identical to the Consumer one, so don't worry about the model numbers. In the Pro series, they're called the RS 400, 500, and 600, so those correspond to the 550, 750, and 950 all respectively. So they reviewed the RS 400 and the RS 600, so the cheapest one and the most expensive one. And there are some differences in what it does with the color gamut, and a little bit of difference in what they do with HDR, but it's not what he listed here. So just to clarify, all of them can accept an HDR signal, an HDR10 signal only. None of them accept Dolby Vision, but they can all accept an HDR10 signal. They can all accept Rec 2020 color, as in that's the container, that's the format that's being fed into the projector. What the projector does with it after that point is different between the models, but they can all accept Rec 2020 color. So They're all even in terms of the signal that they can all accept. Then what they do after they've accepted it appears to be slightly different going by these reviews. So the less expensive ones, the X550R or the RS400 in the Pro series, those ones apparently don't so much produce a wider color gamut. The color gamut that they can produce natively is a little bit wider than Rec 709, which means according to the official definition of what makes a wide color gamut display, it qualifies because it hits Rec 709 and then goes a tiny bit further. But they basically sort of stay pretty darn close to Rec 709. And then they have about a 1700 lumen lamp, so they have that much light to play with as far as the high dynamic range side of things goes. Over on the X750 and X950, they will take a Rec 2020 signal and they can map it to the DCI P3 color gamut. So they actually do go to that wider range of colors. How much they act like they don't hit 100% of DCI P3, but they will actually remap it to those DCI P3 coordinates. So there is a slight difference there. That was laid out in the reviews. That's more or less what you'd be missing is one is mapping it to DCI P3, the other is going just slightly beyond Rec 709. And then the X750 and X950 models, they have brighter lamps as well. So you could use that to either light up a brighter screen or have brighter highlights when you're watching HDR. I think does that answer it?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. Okay.
So the question is that enough to spend the extra money?
Yeah. I mean, well, this ties into his second question, so I'll answer it.
Anyway, so last year I, and maybe you as well, according to this,
I think it was me more than you, but
it was definitely you more than me. I like that I'm getting the credit for this, though. I'll take it. Credit where credit is stolen. We're saying that HDR and color gamut were going to be the real upgrades of the 4K era displays more than just a resolution. If that's the case, why aren't we more excited about these JVC projectors that offer HDR without genuine 4K resolution? Well, because they don't have genuine HDR color gamut stuff.
I mean, they do. It's just the reason I'm not more excited is one, Dolby Vision, because I think Dolby Vision is going to be important. I honestly do.
I'm not saying that it's not going to be important, but I don't get excited about anything until I start thinking that it's something that I could afford.
Right.
And these things are so far away from something I can afford.
I mean, $4,000 for the X550, that's why it's starting to get into that range.
It's getting there. Once it gets down to about 25, maybe $3,000, then I'll start looking at them. Because I think for a normal family, people who, dual income, maybe or one really good income, people who are looking to really enhance their viewing experience, that's a reasonable number that people can say, it's a lot, but I really want it. As opposed to $4,000 where you're like, the only people who are buying that are people who are somebody's telling them this is the best that's out right now. This is the one you should buy. And that's what they do. My parents went to a friend's house recently. Somebody went to church with or something like that for some sort of meeting. And it was like this beautiful place and blah, blah. My parents were like, oh, and they've got this curved TV. I'm like, and they've got this home theater room, and it's got like this big stack of stuff with all these glowing lights, but she doesn't really know how to turn it on. I'm like, my son will come over here and help you. I'm like, no, I won't.
No, man.
That is a rabbit hole I will not jump down. Thank you very much. I am not Alice in Wonderland.
If they pay you installer prices.
That's right. But that's kind of why I don't get excited about it. It's because I want to get excited about something, first of all, that has the full capabilities, or at least most of the capabilities. I have seen and lived with one of the very first 1080p sets. Yes, it was technically 1080p. That's about all it could claim. It was a Westinghouse, and it was a piece of junk. I mean, it was impossible to calibrate. Even though professional calibers were like, oh, you can kind of get that close, but that's about as good as you can get. And if you didn't feed it a really good, clean signal, you weren't going to get anything really, really nice out of it. So that's why I'm not excited about it. It's the same reason I don't get excited about the, generation one of anything, because I know it's gonna be full of bugs, and these guys are getting these things out, and they're probably great, and I'd probably be very happy to own one if I had one. But at the same time, you're asking me my professional opinion. My professional opinion is I just can't be excited about this until it gets closer to the reality of the
No,
situation.
to me, you hit the nail on the head mentioning that it's generation 1, because it really is. This is the first generation of projectors that can do HDR and wide color gamut whatsoever. And to me, it's very much like when those Denon and Marantz AV receivers came out that all had Dolby Atmos, but were not going to be upgradable to DTS-X. I'm like, it's the same thing. Yeah. It's like, it's very cool if you're the type of person who upgrades every year anyway, by all means go for it, be the first one out there and enjoy it and experience, because you're going to buy a new one next year anyway. But if you're the person who wants it to last, 5 or 10 years or something like that, I'm like, just wait one more year, because
it's like 9 months.
Yeah, coming out at the end of this year, you're going to have the update to the Epson LS10000. The LS10000 can already do full DCI P3 because it uses a laser light engine. It can do the full DCI P3 color gamut, but it doesn't have HDMI 2.0A inputs. That's the only reason it doesn't support HDR. It's not that it doesn't have the capability. They just didn't have the correct HDMI ports built into the thing. So there's going to be an update to that at the end of this year. That's going to be a great projector. It's going to be like $8,000-9,000, but it's going to be fantastic. The JVCs are going to get updated. Will any of them have Dolby Vision? I don't know. I'm tempted to wait until at least one of them does. So that's why I'm not super hyped on these, because it's like, it's very tantalizing, but it's Gen 1, and I'm waiting and hoping that Gen 2 will hit all the checkmark boxes, and then I'll be like just as excited as I was when AV receivers got there, like they did last year.
And that's sort of where we're at. And it's not that these aren't exciting; they are very exciting. But they're a stopgap. This is as good as we could do with the time we had. Yeah. And frankly, I'd rather you take your time and just get it right before I start spending my money on something. I feel the same way about food. I'm going to buy 2 kinds of food in this world. I'm going to buy fast food, and by fast I mean not McDonald's. I mean quickly made food that's very, very cheap. Or I'm going to buy something really expensive. I don't go the middle ground. You will not find me at a steakhouse ever. Not unless I am dragged there by somebody else. I can cook a steak. Everybody listens to this podcast can cook a steak. Why do we go out for steaks? I don't know. I don't do it anymore. The last time I went for a steak, I'm like, why did I just pay money for this? I can do this. I don't want a half measure. I don't want to spend my money on something that's half done. I want something that's 100% or that's just really cheap. And so right now, I'm going for, if you want something and you can find a 1080p display right now,
sure,
jump on it. Jump on it, because that stuff's cheap as chips these days. You can get like 6 packs. So that's sort of where I live. Justin, not Bieber, on Facebook. Justin was having the issue where no matter what, Odyssey was setting a subwoofer trim level to -12 dB. He contacted Odyssey, as we suggested, and their first thought was that there might be a low frequency sounds that Justin couldn't hear, but the microphone was picking up. Theoretically possible. He unplugged everything in his house, everything he could in his house, and waited until 2 a.m. so there'd be no noise outside. This man is freaking serious about this thing. So nothing. Still set to -12 dB. Odyssey's best offer at that point was to sell him a replacement microphone for 25 bones, which Justin did find a little on the irritating side. But to be fair, it should fall under Denon's warranty, not Odyssey directly, which fine, whatever. But at least it's been identified, and maybe you call at this point, say, okay, can I get some sort of documentation that says that it's the microphone that needs to be replaced by Denon, and then you call Denon and have them do it. But of course, Justin won't have to do that because Justin has pissed off somebody up there, and now he's paying for his karmic retribution all at once. I'm sorry, Justin, I know what you did. Probably Justin Bieber's doing this to you. That's who I'm going to blame. The whole situation is moot because during a power outage, and what must have been a subsequent power surge fried the HDMI board in his receiver.
Yep.
He has his TV, receiver, and HDCP all plugged into a good surge projector, but he had his Chromecast plugged into a cheap power strip. The Chromecast was plugged directly into his Vizio E-Series. Now, the Chromecast, 2 of the Vizio's HDMI inputs, which had the Chromecast and Denon X4000 connected, and then Denon's HDMI output are all fried. So, warning to everyone. Now, even the cheap power strips should have some sort of let's just
all surge protectors are power strips, but not all power strips are surge protectors.
That is true. So, if it's some sort of surge protector, it should have some sort of some sort of insurance on it that they'll say, covers
not all of them do, though. The really cheapo ones that are, like $7 from Walmart or something, they don't come with any insurance. No, so that might have been the case.
So now he's just going to upgrade. He's strongly considering the Marantz SR6010, which we've already had somebody buy and seems to like it so much. At least it seems to like it so far. But he'd like to know how Yamaha's newly announced RX A60 series stacks up. Which new Yamaha models allow 5.2.4, and what would the retail price be?
So you have to go all the way up to the RX A2060 at a minimum. There is, of course, the 3060 above that, which the 3060 will also allow for 11 speakers, in fact. It can go beyond 5.2.4. It can go to 7.2.4. But yeah, the 2060 is the least expensive one. The retail price is $1,600. They almost always sell for $1,500 right away on Amazon.
It's actually 17. $1,699.
Okay, so retail is $1,700. That'll mean it right away on Amazon. It'll be selling for $1,600 because they always do that with Yamahas. And then there is, of course, last year's RXA 2050 that is still out there, which is currently selling for what, like $1,400 or $1,500, and you can get it for $1,100 over on Accessories for Less. So in the Yamaha lineup, those are the least expensive model, is the 20 series.
And how much is the Marantz? Do we know?
The SR6010, you can get it on Accessories for Less for $900. Now the Yamahas.
I wonder what direction I would go.
Yeah,
let's all guess what direction Tom would go.
The Yamahas do have 9 amplifiers built into them. Like even the 20 series that tops out at 9 speakers, it does have 9 amps already built in. Whereas the SR6010 has 7 amplifiers built in, so you have to add at least 2 external amps to get up to 9 speakers.
I don't think that you think it's
somewhat half the price.
You think of it as you get to have an external amp. So anyways, he also asked, does Yamaha offer anything similar to sub EQHT? What would be the YPAO RSC equivalent in Odyssey? Well, the new ones do.
Well, not really. They don't have an equivalent of sub EQ HD because they don't have dual independent subwoofer.
No, they don't. But they do. We say last week they can EQ down to 31.5 hertz.
Using YPAO, they go down to 31.5, and then they go down to 15 point whatever now manually. You can manually put in a parametric EQ with a center frequency at 15 point something hertz.
Frankly, the YPAO is still not up to snuff when it compares to Odyssey. Even their best version is the thing that I like about it is the whole reflected sound thing. But I don't know how much of a difference that makes audibly. Like it has, you have your little Nerf boomerang thing that you put it in, and it's not Nerf, it's plastic, but it looks like those those 3-pronged Nerf boomerangs. You throw them and come back. Anyways, you put it in the 3 spots, and it's supposed to measure the reflected sound. I mean, it did it.
Well, that's the angle measurement.
Yeah, the RSC.
So there's reflected. Oh yeah, the reflected sound.
Yeah, RSC is reflected sound control. That's what
the
it
angle
is.
measurement makes it a tetrahedron. It adds one that's placed a bit higher in the middle. So the new 60 series, the 2060 and the 3060 both do have the 3D angle measurement thing now. Of course, it only applies to Yamaha's own DSP listening modes. It does do nothing for DTS:X or Atmos, which is where it might be helpful. So that's still kind of a moot point. But yeah, you have to at least get to YPAO with RSC with multi-point before you even equal the most basic mult-EQ. Not 2EQ, but mult-EQ. So once you get to RSC, once you get to YPAO with reflected sound control with multi-point measurement, it's more or less equivalent to multi-Q XT, except it still only goes down to 31.5 hertz. It still doesn't go all the way down in the super deep bass. So basically the only reason to get a Yamaha is if you want MusicCast. That's my opinion. And MusicCast is a killer feature. Don't get me wrong. It's like if you want that whole house audio and you want it built into your AV receiver and you want to be able to take like a Dolby True HD source and play it anywhere in your house with all of the down mixing done automatically for you, then MusicCast is kind of a killer feature. But if that's not what you're going to use, then go for the Marantz. That's my opinion.
I don't really. I think Yamahas are fine receivers. Anybody who buys a Yamaha, I don't have any problems with it. It's just if you're worried about room correction, they don't stack up. Nobody does though. Nobody who doesn't have Odyssey does, except for
Dirac.
Dirac or the turn off stuff, I guess. Probably.
Well,
I mean, if you've got that kind of money. Okay, so would a 5.2.2 setup using front heights really sound all that different from a 5.2 setup? What about upmixing 5.1 soundtrack to 5.2.2 setup? Does it really make a difference? Well, it's going to make a difference. There's going to be more speakers.
If it's top
Well,
middles, you'll
he's saying
definitely
front
notice
heights.
that. He's saying front heights. That's right.
Now, the people that I know that have done front heights only, most of them have found benefit from it in that they had a very large screen, and it's for them it made it feel like the sound was more anchored within the center of the screen. Now, whether or not that's true or not, whether or not it was just a placebo effect or expectation bias,
I can see
like
speakers up there, so my brain fills in the gap.
That's right. I don't much know, but that's what they said. They like even the Yamaha Presence speakers, which were around long before any of this height crap. Even the people I knew that did that said the exact same thing. It was like, yeah, it kind of lifts the sound a little bit, makes it a little bit, better anchored to the center of the screen, but the difference was never super dramatic on front heights for most of the people I've talked to. So if you're going to have a 5.2.2 setup, kind of think you should go with top middles.
Yeah, which is what Dolby recommends anyway. If you look at their Dolby Atmos setups, they're like, if what you're doing is topping out at 7 speakers, the 2 speakers to add on top of the traditional 5 are the top middles, because there is no question those are the ones you're going to notice the most as being something new and different, because they're right above you and you will notice that as different. Front heights, my opinion on them has been, going back to like Dolby Pro Logic 2Z, it's not that it's totally inaudible, it's just I never thought it was truly worthwhile. Right. To me, it was never super impressive having front heights.
And that's what most people say, but they say it in terms that save the fact that they spent a lot of money on the stuff. So they're saying the same thing you're saying. So on a different topic, Justin has 11x10 spare bedroom like to use as a one-man, 2-channel only music listening room. He has $1,500 to spend on a pair of speakers, a subwoofer, and the receiver or integrated amp. He's really hoping for a holographic imaging, realism, and super quiet noise floor. It's something that just sounds different from his EMP Tech speakers. Not that he's at all unhappy with his EMP Techs. This is just about the fun of hearing an alternative. So what can we recommend? He figures he'll be sitting about 7 feet away from the speakers.
I got an idea.
Well, this screams 2 things. It screams headphones, number one. But he clearly doesn't want headphones. So it really screams electrostatic speakers or some sort of planar magnetic speaker, because that's going to sound dramatically different.
Yes. And when you're talking about that holographic type of imaging where, something seems like it can move right through your head, like the coin in X-Men First Class or something. And it's a one-man theater. You're not worrying about having that sort of imaging for anyone else besides one seat, and it's a fixed position. Then, planar magnetics or electrostats, that's where you're looking.
So going to your local dealer who has, it might even be Best Buy Magnolia store, that has Magnepans or Martin Logans or anything like that, and just listening to anything that they have that's in your price range is sort of the way to go. What you don't want to do is spend too much money on stuff that's trying to say, oh, well, this has a bunch of bass or whatever. You don't care about that. You just wanted to get down low enough so that you can cross it over into your sub, which you will place via the whole, and this is small enough, you could use one of the sealed boxes, SVSs, that the SP1000s or something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to recommend in this case, just to save money, because we got a budget here, so and we probably want to spend the lion's share on the speakers themselves. So since this is music only, which means the likelihood of needing to really get down to 20 hertz is pretty low. And this is a one-man theater, so one sub is fine, because you probably have the freedom to place this almost anywhere in the room. So you'll use the subwoofer crawl method. You'll put the sub where your seat is going to be. You'll go around the perimeter of the room until you find the spot where you have the most uniform bass during a bass sweep. But I was going to recommend the HSU STF-2 just because it's the least expensive. That still sounds really good, and it gets down to 25 hertz, which should be totally fine for almost any music that you're going to play. So that one's only $320. So that's
don't be surprised if you walk out of that thing going, I can't believe how much bass that thing puts out. Maybe I should get it for my home theater. And we'll be like, no, listen, dude. It's a very small room.
But I mean, an STF2 in that size of room playing music only, I'm totally fine with that to save a couple $100. To me, it's worth it when you're working within the budget. But Magnepan, they have their MMGs. You can buy them directly from Magnepan. They're $600 a pair. That's right where I would point you. I'd get some Magnepan MMGs, I get an HSU STF-2, and then you're going to need something to power all this, and I must warn you, Magnepans are power hungry. They are power hungry speakers. Now, thankfully, you're in a very small room sitting very close to them, so you still don't need a ton of power. But I would kind of lean towards two things. One, I would lean towards something that does allow you to use HDMI sources, because plenty of people want to attach like, a streaming service to it or something like that. Maybe want to attach a Roku or a Chromecast or something like that. So I like having HDMI. I still want to have bass management, because a ton of stereo receivers and stereo integrated amps don't have actual bass management. They might have like a summed output that you can feed to a subwoofer, but it's not applying a high pass filter to the speakers, which you definitely want to do. And then I still like to have, some EQ available to me, or to have the option to do something like dynamic EQ if I want to. So I would point you to one of the Slimline Marantz receivers, which you can get it from accessories for less. Like they have their 1506 model for $350. And the really nice thing about that is they give you front, left, and right pre-outs, which is really hard to find at that price. And you only need 2-channel pre-outs. So you have front, left, and right pre-outs. You have a subwoofer pre-out, which is bass managed. So within this budget, we've pretty much hit your budget already. But it gives you the option to add a 2-channel external amp in the future if you want to and you have the funds. So that's my setup I would go for.
Yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. I could get behind that. Basically, you're just looking for pre-outs on any receiver, because you will be sitting close enough where I wouldn't so much worry about these things exploding your receiver, especially if you're only going to be sitting in there listening for a couple hours, an hour or two at a time. I wouldn't worry about that. The first couple of times I use it, I would keep an eye on my receiver and check the temperature every once in a while by putting my hand on top of it, make sure my receiver had plenty of air to breathe. But other than that, I don't think I would worry too much about it. But having the pre-outs will give you the ability to upgrade later. Yeah, really, Odyssey, that sort of stuff. I don't even know how well they work with electrostatic speakers. It should technically work just as fine, just as well. But I don't know how well they're going to work. But what you really want to do is make sure that you're not trying to have the receiver or your amplifiers power the speakers any more than they need to be, which means you do need an actual crossover. You need some sort of bass management going on there. Which
for the 2-channel amp in the future, if you want to get one, because he mentioned one thing he wants is a really silent noise floor. And when you're looking at the the $100 amp, like I suggested, like that Dayton Audio, the APA 100, Monoprice has a 2-channel amp that's like 150 watts per channel for like $200. That'll actually be coming up later. But both of those, they do have a little bit of a noise floor to them, and that's to be expected at that type of price range. Like, you're just not going to get total silence. There's going to be a little bit of hiss coming out of those amps. So Emotiva, we were just ragging on them for being a bit slow on updates, but they have actually released their BasX line now. Okay. And this, I will say for Emotiva, I have never known them to give false specs. Right? Their specs.
No, the specs are honest.
They're very honest. So when they say they have a 120 decibel signal to noise ratio, I believe them, because that's entirely doable with a Class A amplifier that's built well with a nice toroidal transformer, and that's what they're saying this BasX line has. So for $400 for the 2-channel one, which is 150 watts per channel. So it's their BasX A-300. That's the model number. That would be a really nice unit if you want to get a silent noise floor. I haven't heard it for myself yet, but I do trust Emotiva enough with their amps that when they say that's what it does, I believe them. So
you could always ask.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. On a completely different note, what do we think of Vandersteen speakers?
I haven't heard enough of them to know.
Yeah. Speakers. I think they're really expensive. Aren't they really expensive?
I know fans of Vandersteen are ape for them. I know that.
The people that love them, love them.
That's just probably why he's interested.
People want to invite me over to their house to listen to their speakers. I'll listen to them. Did Rob say something about being able to demo Ascend Acoustics speakers in California? If so, where?
Yep, you can go right to their headquarters, which are in San Clemente. So give them a call.
That's near Los Angeles, isn't it? San Clemente? I'm pretty sure.
I'm not actually sure, but
pretty sure.
It's definitely in California. So anyway, give them a call. Go to their website, go to their contact us. They have their address right there in the contact us. So it's not like they're hiding where they are. But give them a call. Ask them if you can come in and do a demo. They have a demo room, and they're more than happy to accommodate. So if you're in California, you can hear them in person.
All right. I have a problem with this guy's name. It can't be real, right? It's not real.
I don't think it's real.
Yeah, I hope not. Anyway, LED. We're going with LED.
Yeah.
LED has, are you putting the picture up?
Do you want it right now?
No,
Okay.
I don't want it right now. We go. We can tell. Just tell me when you do it so that I can
Okay.
switch. All right. Previously, he had a 3.2 system and wanted to expand to 5.2. His audio buddies and audio experts, yeah, right. The yeah, right was from him, not from me.
That's right.
Recommended he install in-ceiling speakers for the surrounds, and he did. Sounded okay, but never quite right. As an experiment, he moved a pair of Klipsch RF32 towers from the bedroom to the theater in surround positions and found it sounded much better. Duh. He also, the duh was for me. He also continues and moved a pair of Klipsch RS32s.
Yeah, Mark II. Yeah, they're like the Mark II.
Into the surround back positions, making a full 7.2 system, having disconnected the in-ceilings. The results were okay, but since his seats are only 4 feet from the back wall, he's thinking of a 5.2.4 Atmos setup would be a better choice. What do we think?
All right, so I'm putting up the diagram first here. That's what's going up there. So you can see the layout. So his in-ceiling speakers are behind him.
Yeah, terrible place.
Yeah, that's a well. I mean,
it's not bad. I can see what they were.
What the thinking was. So I'll go over to the picture so you can see they're way up high. This ceiling is I don't
right
know,
near the back wall.
You can't call that vaulted, is it? I mean, I don't know what you call that style of ceiling.
Not vaulted.
But anyway, it's quite a high ceiling. So the in-ceiling speakers are way above him, but they are behind his seat. And then you can see where he's put in his Klipsch speakers on stands as surround backs, and then he's got the other ones as surrounds, towers as surrounds.
Yeah.
So yeah,
are those subwoofers like right?
Yeah, he's
next
got a
to
subwoofer right behind. No, he's got a sub right behind his seat.
What's that other one?
2000s. This thing right here that I'm mousing over, that's his other tower speaker. That's
his tower speaker. Okay, I thought it was.
Yeah, so I mean, right now what you basically have is 7.2.2, like without having touched anything, without installing anything else.
I would use those back speakers as top heights or rear heights. I mean, rear heights, right? The ones are top.
I mean, they'd be top rears.
Top rears.
Yeah, they'd be top rears where they are right now.
And then get rid of the surround back speakers altogether, which I think are probably messing things up more often than not, because I think they're too close.
It's hard to say. Yeah, because I mean, you do definitely want something that is behind you. And when you've got a ceiling this high and then the surround back speakers that low, I mean, in this situation, I'm not going to tell you that the way he's got them set up will sound redundant, because it won't. You will definitely hear the difference between what is directly behind your head and then what is clearly well above you. There's no question you would be able to discern those as two different sources of sound. I mean, you could just leave it and call those top middles. They're not so far back that it would be insane to call them top middles. So you could just leave it as a 7.2.2. However, as Craig Eggers from Dolby said, they do prefer if you can do a 5.2.4, and I'm not opposed to that. So you could call those top rears, install some in-ceiling speakers in front of you, and call them top fronts, and then just disconnect the surround back speakers, like Tom said. That would be the other option.
That's what I would do. Honestly, that's what I would do. I think those rear speakers are probably messing you up more than they're helping, to be honest.
Yeah, I do have to kind of agree with that. You could take those
speakers and put them, get rid of the towers that you have, which are really, frankly, too low. I mean, they need to be a little bit higher anyways, and mount those speakers on the walls if that's possible. Can we see the other wall? Is there a picture?
No, I didn't. There's no picture of the left wall.
I bet it's open to the rest of the house.
It looks like it, because if we go to the diagram, it clearly is, because there's a kitchen table over here and a kitchen.
Yeah, so he needs something that's on the stand anyways.
That's right. He has no left wall.
Yeah, so that's why. That's fine. Then leave it as you have it, I suppose.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, what you could do is, since they're tower speakers and it looks like he has the ability right now, they're more or less directly to the sides. You could squeak them back just a little bit, so that as 5.1 speakers, they're a little bit behind your seat, and then just call the ones that are in the ceiling top rears and then install top fronts.
No, you might want to just decouple them from your floor anyway, so you could put them on some sort of stand riser thingy, and get them up a little bit would not be a terrible thing to do.
Yeah,
you could do that. So
that sounds good.
I would be 5.2.2 right now, and then 5.2.4 if you install front heights. Is that right?
Yeah.
No, top
front heights or top fronts.
Fronts.
Yeah. Top fronts.
I hate Dolby Atmos.
The names.
I hate the name. I hate them so much. All right, his mains are Martin Logan Eon Eyes. with
the name.
Martin
Yep.
Logan Motif X Center. I hate you too. What
There they
speakers?
are. They're electrostats. They're electrostats.
They are electrostats. So what speakers should you get for the additional Atmos and or
Ooh.
surround speakers?
Yeah, that is
Something
tough.
from Martin Logan or something else similar. Budget is $800 a pair. He has looked at the Martin Logan Motion 15s, but is open to anything we might suggest.
Yeah, so first off, I want to say like the Motion series that they have, those are the folded ribbon tweeter ones. In my opinion, they do not timbre match. I mean, I know they're from the same manufacturer,
Yeah.
but I don't think they timbre match at all. I really don't. I'm sorry. Maybe there are people who think they do, but not in my opinion. So I mean, I'd be looking for something that sounds a little closer to the electrostats that you have up front. I don't think going for Magnepan surrounds is a great idea. Just because either having their towers, which are these gigantic, flat, very thin but flat dipole things as your surrounds, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm more inclined to lean towards just getting some neutral speakers that will not draw attention to themselves as being out of place or having a characteristic sound. Do I think a neutral speaker will perfectly match your fronts? No. But what I'm going for is inoffensive.
I'm actually
goal.
surprised he can get those Klipsch and those Martin Logans to level match
Yeah.
at all, because the Klipsch are so efficient and
Yeah.
the Martin Logans are not efficient.
That's true.
So unless he's got like a volume control on like his amp so that he could separately goose those up so they can get close to level, I'm surprised he can level match these things. You actually want to look for something that's a little power hungry, to be honest with you.
That wouldn't hurt.
So 4 ohm speakers, 6 ohm speakers, something
He's
that
powering a lot of them off of his receiver though, so I don't want to go nuts.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I was thinking RBH.
RBH, sure, that's a good one. They're neutral. I can be down with that.
Yeah.
So this would be an in-ceiling speaker, is what you're saying?
Well,
so,
I mean, I think he's thinking of replacing his surrounds with some like bookshelf speakers instead of the towers. So if you're doing that, you could get some like RBH or even EMP Tech. Getting those as your surrounds, and then for the in ceilings, like RBH has in ceilings, of course, as well. I don't know if he's replacing the Sonance ones that he already has installed as what will become his top rears, but yeah, that to me, I'm thinking something neutral, inoffensive, won't draw attention to himself as having a characteristic sound that doesn't match the characteristic sound of your front speakers. I think that's sort of the way to go here.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's most of the speakers we generally talk about in this podcast would fit that bill. It's really hard for when you're trying to integrate an electrostatic speaker into a home theater. It becomes a huge deal, and there's nothing wrong with it. I don't want you to think that you've done that.
No, they can sound great.
Yeah, I bet these things sound amazing. I think I've actually heard these before, but I mean, just about anything that would, I mean, the Veris Grands or any sort of the speakers that we generally talk about on this podcast would do well here. It's just a matter of making sure that you can level match them and that they fit into your budget and your sound. So Perion Audio, who they don't make in ceilings or anything like that, so you'd be out of luck there.
Well, they do have some Intimus in ceilings, but
I guess they do. Yeah. I don't know how well they would level match. I mean, they would timbre match, but in ceilings don't really need to anyway. So
yeah. Now I did have a sort of call from the past idea. I'm going to switch off the picture here, but I did have sort of a thought from the past, which is that I actually thought Axiom audio speakers weren't too bad at matching Martin Logans, of all things. Now, that's going for some audio memory from many years ago. But to me, those Martin Logan electrostats, they have that little bit, I don't know what to call it, like a little bit of sizzle in the top almost. That you can get that sort of that trebly sound to them occasionally.
That does describe Axiom. They have
and Axiom has that sound too. That's why. Yeah, that's why it struck me that they're not the mismatch you might expect. And I actually quite like Axiom's in-ceiling speakers because they're a fully self-contained unit. You don't need a separate backer box for them. Now, in my opinion, they're overpriced at $500 a pair. They're overpriced, but honestly, I think sound-wise and certainly convenience-wise for installing, I wouldn't mind those as a choice. So I'll throw it out there in case you're interested.
I'm still like, I once suggested to an installer friend of mine that somebody that I thought that this guy should get, because he was looking for some new surround back speakers or surround speakers, and I suggested pairing Axioms with his Klipsch, and he was like, "You will never get those to level match. You just won't. You know, it'll be -12 on one end and +12 on the other, and you'll never get them to level match because you've got to stick with Klipsch." So that's why I'm really surprised that he can get this thing to work at all, to be honest with you. So that's the only thing I'm really worried about. That being said, if you can get any of these speakers that Rob's mentioning, or any of the other ones that we talk about on a regular basis, to level match, what you don't want to do is get some speaker, and maybe EMP Tech might not be the right choice for this exact reason. Some speaker that can play really loud with not a lot of power. That's what you don't want.
Well, that's not so much EMP Tech. EMP Tech can play really, really loud with a lot of power.
With a lot of power.
They have huge power handling, but they're not like super efficient, so they would work.
So what about a 2-channel amplifier to pair with his Marantz? Am I on the right question still?
That's the one.
Okay. To pair with his Marantz SR6010, another one for the additional 2 channels. So
I ran through them earlier.
Yes, we talked about that. The Dayton APA 100, the one from Monoprice, the Emotiva BasX. Those will do.
Yeah, I mean, if all you're going to be doing is powering one of the overhead pairs, like that's all you're going to use it for, is to get the cheapest one, get the Dayton. There's no reason to go nuts.
Do you have an extra receiver lying around? Yeah. There you go. You can turn down the volume to -30 on it, so that.
But the other option, of course, with the 6010 is to actually use the external amplifier to power your Martin Logans. And if you're going to do that, then I would suggest going for like the Emotiva BasX. Even though it's double the price of the mono price, it does have that nice low noise floor. It's got plenty of power on tap, able to handle 4-ohm loads with aplomb. So if that's an idea you have in mind, is using the external amp to power your fronts instead, then it's worth the extra money in my opinion. But if it's going to be the top ones, go for the Dayton. Super cheap.
Looking at Dolby's website, in the normal 5.1 setup, they have the surrounds at 3 and 9 o'clock positions, while in their 5.1.4 setup, the 0.4 being in the ceiling, they have the surrounds at the 430 and 730 position. Why is this? That's because they're liars. They're filthy, dirty liars. And they're trying to rewrite history. That's why. Because they have been suggesting the same things forever. And then all of a sudden, they're like, no, elevate your surround speakers? We've never said that. They should all be at ear level. Just like we have always said. Let us go change our website. No one's going to look at the other one anymore. No, yes, because Dolby Atmos came out and they're like, wait a second, we need this all to match. We'll just, frankly, the speakers are still within the range of where they had always recommended.
It's anywhere from 90 to 110 degrees. So either directly beside you or slightly behind you.
So what they said before was like kind of in the middle right there where they were saying before, and now they've just kind of moved it a little bit so that Dolby Atmos makes more sense, but it's still within the same range.
Yeah.
So I'm being a little bit hard on them by saying that.
It's anywhere from 90 to 110 degrees left and right of dead center. And so, and my opinion has been, when you're using 5 speakers, it makes sense to have them a little bit behind you so that they're not directly to either side, which of course would fit within that angle range. So what they're showing in their diagram is they show one extreme, they show one diagram with them at 90 degrees, they show another diagram with them at 110 degrees, but anywhere within that range is acceptable.
Yeah. So the speaker wire to his left surround is about 20 feet long, and the right is about 30 feet long. Should he worry about the length difference in terms of audio quality?
No.
Not unless there is something that's slowing down the speed of light from 186,000 miles per second. Because if you think that extra 10 feet matters 1 iota to 186,000 miles per second, light could go around the Earth or over 7 times in 1 second. So I'm not so worried that this electrical thing is going to be slowed down so much by 10 feet. Yeah, also, the surround wires are currently 16 gauge. So you upgrade them to 12 gauge or leave them alone. I would leave them alone.
They're fine. There's nothing wrong there.
Every once in a while, somebody will come at me with some question that just makes me want to just punch him in the face, like the other guy.
Well, not this. Let's not make it sound like this.
Not this. But there was a question. This guy came up at me and he was like, I've got, we're gonna do it with this. I bought this and stuff like that, but I'm giving him a recommendation. He goes, well, does it have Bluetooth? I'm like, you're never gonna use Bluetooth. Yeah, but this other one has Bluetooth. I'm like, you are never going to use Bluetooth. No, but does it have Bluetooth? you're not going to use it. You will never use it. Bluetooth is 33 feet line of sight on a clear day, no microwaves in 100 miles of the place. That's Bluetooth. Like Bluetooth doesn't stretch from my head to my pocket half the time. No, you're never going to use Bluetooth. Like, that kind of question just struck me. I don't know how I got on that. I was thinking of something different. But it had nothing to do with this. I don't know. I was on something there, and then I just kind of got away from me. I just want to say, Bluetooth sucks. All right, there we go. On a different subject. Sometimes on his Samsung TV, when he's watching scenes of two people talking close up, and one of the people lose just a little, their faces seem to melt. Or the left side of the face moves and the right side tries to catch up, causing a melting effect. It never happens in fast action scenes or sports, and it only happens at all very rarely. What could be the cause? What could the cause of this be? He's got to have some processing on, right? Or edge enhancement or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, this was a fairly modern, it's like a HU 8500 series, I think is what he has. I'm thinking that's got to be something to do with a frame interpolation.
That's the only thing I could think to. The first thing that came to my mind was like that 120 hertz processing.
Yeah, because like really old LCDs that just had horrible lag, like that horrible like smearing thing. It could have been that, but that's not so much the case here. So this sounds like a frame interpolation. Now on Samsung's, they give you independent settings. They give you like de-judder and like, I don't know what they call it, clear motion, smooth motion, whatever the heck the thing is.
Turn everything off.
Yeah, turn it off. Yeah, turn it off.
Turn it all off.
Turn it off.
Default everything to off until you can't see a picture anymore. Let's put it that way. Then start turning things back on.
Yeah, there's one that's basically affecting the LCD panel itself, which is the thing that's interpolating frames that don't exist in the source. That you need to turn off. The other one is basically controlling how much the backlight flashes, and that one you can turn up and down without affecting the thing. But what it tends to do is just dim the image because it starts inserting black frames. So it just makes the image overall dimmer. So there's really no reason to turn either of them on, to be honest.
Two things.
Turn them both down to zero.
Zero.
Will most likely solve the issue.
All right. With the 7.2 setup, while watching the Eagles Farewell Tour DVD, there is sound playing in all 7 channels, even though the DVD is only 5.1. Is this Marantz SR6010 doing some kind of upmixing?
Sounds like.
Yep. Dolby
Surround
or DTS. It's got to be Dolby Surround, right? It probably doesn't have the DTS-X yet. So,
well, he could. The firmware update is out there, so there's no reason he couldn't.
So but it's doing something.
It's a DVD. It's probably Dolby Digital. It's probably using the Dolby Surround Upmixer to expand to all 7 speakers,
which is perfectly acceptable. There's nothing wrong with that. Knock yourself out. Very rarely do we get complaints that too many of my speakers are playing.
But yeah, you can on the remote. There's like the movie, music, game, something else thing, listening modes. You press that, it'll actually bring up a thing on your TV. It'll bring up on your display, and you can cycle through the listening modes. So
I use my Harmony remote, but a lot of times I press info, and it'll show me what channels are being sent in and what channels are being used. Yeah. And that will tell you right there without having to look to see what it's doing, whether or not it's sending things out the way it should be.
But Dolby Surround does tend to be the default, so that's probably
I wonder what his source is, because it could be that his source is doing it too, but it's unlikely. I mean, if he was using something like I mean, a video game would just, if it would say it was using 7 channels, but if it's only 5.1, it would be only sound would be coming out of 5. Lastly, when watching Amazon Prime on the built-in TV app, he can't bring up the Marantz menu. Why?
You must be using audio return channel.
That's the way. That's what I'm thinking too.
I think it has to be.
So the input that the Marantz is actually going into is actually not being used. You're using a different input, and that input is the TV itself. Yeah. So therefore, there is no overlay to put on top of the source. Now, if you plug the Amazon Prime into your Marantz, then you would be able to see
it's the Amazon Prime app on his TV.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you had like a stick and you plug that directly into your
like a Fire TV or something.
Your receiver, then you could send it up to your TV and
if you want to be able to see the Marantz's menu, what you'd have to do is run an optical audio cable from your TV to the Marantz and choose that as your audio input rather than using the audio return channel. Because using the audio return channel that's going via the HDMI connection, it's what Tom said. The Marantz is like, oh, that's the input now, not my output. So it has basically turned off the outgoing HDMI signal so that it can accept audio coming back in from the TV via audio return. So that's what's going on there.
Tony. All right. Tony is wiring a 1.2. Wait a second. It's missing the subwoofer. Anyways, he's wiring a 5.1.2 Atmos system for a friend. The room is 25 by 15, open on one side with 9-foot ceilings. He has the 5.1 channels wired, but needs advice on the Atmos channels. The surrounds are in ceiling and almost directly over the seats. Oh, so you've already wired the
You've
0.2.
already got top middles.
Done. Not ideal, he knows, but there's no choice here. It is ideal. You have top middles. And it's new construction, so you can wire top fronts, top middles, or wides. What position should you go with?
Well,
you should go with surrounds. Is what you should go with.
Yeah, ear level. Well, as we always say, slightly above ear level, but ear level surrounds would be the ideal choice here. And I noticed he's saying that top rears or rear heights are not options. So it seems as though he doesn't have space behind where the seats are going to go to add speakers, which unfortunately is where I would have recommended putting them. But if
you don't have surrounds right now, you have 3.1.2 is what you have right now. 3.1.2. You need surrounds. You have top middles.
But I mean, we can compromise and we can make this work, and we can say, okay, your surrounds are in ceiling speakers. In which case, really your only option to go at this point, because there's no sense installing top middles. They're going to now sound redundant with your surrounds because they'll be in physically the same space. So the only thing that really makes sense here are top fronts. I mean, you could go front heights high up on the front wall, but top fronts are the ones that you're going to notice is actually steering some Atmos sounds around. So that's pretty, like 5 feet in front of you. That's where I'd put some top fronts if you're set on this idea.
Can't we have surrounds? I think we need to have surrounds.
I'm thinking there's a reason that the surrounds are in ceilings. I'm assuming there's a reason.
Really? Because I kind of feel like we could maybe compromise here in some way.
Speakers on stands, tower
speakers on stands. Yeah, like speakers on stands are your friend. I mean, this is new construction. You could actually put the speaker wire coming out right next to the couch, like underneath the couch, where the couch is going to go
up from the floor. Yeah.
And then there it is, right, coming up onto two little stands. You put like two little orb speakers on there, or those focal ones or something.
Yeah,
it looks so
birds.
cute on like a little stick almost thing. It would be great. And then you would actually have 5.1.2. Yeah, clearly that's a better solution.
Already wired for top middles.
Any of the other things that Rob said, all of those words out of his mouth were wrong, and I am clearly right. All right. Also, can we speak in general terms of what speakers are the most important and to least important in an Atmos DTS X setup? Well, the front three are quite important. I think we can all agree on that.
I mean, your traditional 5, you're really not allowed to start without the traditional 5. So the traditional 5, those are the most important.
And then top middles would be the next one, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a toss-up, either top middles or surround backs.
I guess it depends on your room, too.
Yeah. Because to me, having sounds that can be steered behind you is just as important as sounds overhead. So it depends. What do you want? Do you want to be able to steer sounds behind you more than overhead, or more overhead than behind you? Because that will decide. Then it's whichever one you didn't choose in that last choice.
Yeah.
So if you're, and as Craig Egger said, if you're going to have surround backs, call them rear heights instead, so that you can call it 5.2.4. I have no problem with that advice. So that's the way.
Yeah. All right, a few months ago, Tony purchased a second SVS PB1000 for his 12 by 22 foot home theater. With an RE, because Rob's from Canada.
Yes.
He roughly level matched them to 72 dB with an iPhone app before running Odyssey, but the reading was all over the map.
Yeah, that can happen.
His receiver is a Denon 1712 with multi-QXT. Can we recommend an app for iPhone to use as an SPL meter that will be better than the one he already used? Or should he run Odyssey with one sub and level match to the 0 dB trim and do the same for the other? He's looking to upgrade his receiver in the next 6 to 12 months. And we'll be getting something with multi-QXT32 and sub-EQHT. So this is a cheaper is better thing for now. Yeah, I would just use Odyssey.
Yes, me too. Because the problem is the microphone in the phone, not the app.
Yeah, or your body holding the phone or something. It's
the microphone.
It's the microphone. It really is. Yeah, I would just use Odyssey. It's so easy. It's so cheap. You run it for one, and then you run it again for the second one,
Mhm.
and then you plug them both in at the same time, and Odyssey go, oh, that's 3 dB too loud, and turn it down 3 dB.
That's
And
right.
That'll be it. That'll be the
Yeah.
end. Odyssey will be, you'll be like, haha, I tricked Odyssey.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of extra time because you're running Odyssey twice to do it this way, but
three
that's
times in the end.
Oh, three times total, yeah. But yeah, that's the better way to do it because I don't have a recommendation for a better SPL app because it's the hardware that's the problem, not the software. So yeah.
Also, should he run Odyssey with each sub individually, get the 2 distance readings, and then adjust the phase on one of the subs until they both read equal distances according to Odyssey?
Well, that's what Sub EQ HT does. It just does it automatically.
That's right. So yeah, you could definitely do this.
Yes.
I don't know that I would bother.
If you have a rectangular room and you have the subs placed across the room from one another,
it's
then
going to be awfully close.
I wouldn't bother. But if you have an oddly shaped room or the subs are not, like mirror image placed across the room from one another, then yeah, this is a fine way to do it.
Yeah. All right. So good. That was easy. That was easier than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, when I said iPhone app, I was like, oh, Rob's going to have like a laundry.
No, I mean the SPL meter apps are fine for like I want to go to a theater and get a general idea of how loud things are playing.
Right.
It's fine for that. It can give you a ballpark idea, but for trying to tune bass, the microphones just don't respond to bass very well in phones. So yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Ted. This is the guy who wrote our outro music.
That's right.
Ted's wife got him a pair of Oppo PM3s. Look remarkably like this if you're on the YouTube channel. For his birthday. They sound delicious. That's his word, not mine. Yeah. When listening on his iPhone 6, although perhaps a little lacking in bass extension.
Okay.
I can get behind that. He thought they would, and honestly, I think the lacking in bass extension is because we're so used to our headphones being bassy because Dr. Dre is.
And evil. iPhones do have like EQ modes.
They do.
In. So if you want a little extra bass, you can turn on a little extra bass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he thought they would sound even better through an amp with some real juice, but when he plugged them into his down receiver, the sound gave him fatigue almost immediately.
I know this phenomenon.
He tried all sorts of different program material at different volumes, got the same result, instant fatigue. The amount of distortion was remarkable.
Yes, I have to say, many AV receivers, I would say almost all of them, have pretty crappy headphone amps. I gotta say, it's an afterthought. They throw it in there because they gotta still have a headphone jack, but they are not low noise floor nice units anymore.
So should he invest in something like the Oppo HA2? Would this improve the sound, particularly the aforementioned lack of bass? Again, your phone can fix the lack of bass right now. I mean, if you really wanted to get something like that, you could. I'm not super sure you need to improve the lack of bass. There's lots of sources that you can use that will do something like that. Like if you're always going to be using your phone as a source or your computer as a source, there's lots and lots of outboard DACs that you can use that will do all of the things that you're asking for, and they don't cost a remarkable amount of money.
Yeah, the one I want to point out is the TIAC, HAP50. I really like that unit because it's quiet. It has a silent noise floor, which for some reason seems to be the most difficult thing to do with a headphone amplifier. But it's got about an 8-hour battery life. It's a lithium-ion rechargeable battery, so it can certainly travel with you. It is not the most sleek thing ever.
How do you plug? What can you plug into that? Because I couldn't quite figure that out.
Yeah, you can plug in regular USB, which is actually really nice for an iPhone because you can use the included Lightning cable. It has a standard USB-A port. So you can just use the Lightning cable out of the iPhone straight in via USB. It also has a combo 3.5 millimeter analog / mini optical. So you can send in 2-channel PCM via optical connection. You have to get one of the adapters that goes from traditional optical to mini optical, but it plugs right into that port, or of course just regular stereo analog via a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. So it can take any of those as sources. It's a really nice unit. It's under $200 on Amazon. So it's certainly not super cheap, but it's not crazy expensive like some headphone amps are. Really nice unit, that little TX.
Yeah, but if he's using his phone, I mean,
if he's using his phone, it's great.
Keep using your phone.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just use your phone. He has a comment. Since getting a dedicated room last year, he's been able to play with the seating position in the room. Has noticed remarkable differences in sound when moving the seat forward or back by just a foot or two. 38% from the back wall made the front stage speakers nearly disappear, and the surround enveloped the seating position. But that put his seat too far forward in this 13 by 12 room. So that seat is now 1 foot farther back. It's still good, but not as transparent as it was. So it's not an uncommon phenomenon. We talk about this all the time about where you should put your seats. And the reason is because of how sound bounces around your room. You know, these room modes and these and depending on how far
sound wave interactions
and how far apart your speakers are in relation to you and everything else, it all sort of plays in to
I did want to mention on Home Theater Geeks this past week, they had an acoustician who's been doing it for like 40 years, and he's talked so at length about all the trouble he goes to get the bass sounding good from 2 full-range speakers, which is what so many customers want. I'm like, just use subwoofers and bass management. You don't have to go through this. Yeah. You don't have to kill yourself rearranging the room, acoustically treating it, changing everything by like all this stuff just to get the bass to work, which is what is always the problem. It's like, that's why we talk so much about multiple subwoofers, to solve that very issue.
And honestly, you know, we do talk about this, about how where you should put your seats and stuff, but it's also indicative of how well situated your room is for home theater in this application. If you're, I mean, what did he say, 13 by 12? Is that what he said? Yep. 13 by 12, it's practically a box. You probably have 8-foot ceilings or something like that. 8 and 12 sort of go into each other, and there's just it's all too close together, and that makes those room modes that much more powerful and that much harder to deal with. Having room treatments, having bass management, having multiple subwoofers, all these things we're talking about all these things to fix this exact problem, to make it so that you can move that seat.
Yeah, if you were in a wide open field without all the walls reflecting sound back in, then you'd full range speakers, go for it.
Well, you could also take his same speakers that he's talking about and put them there and move his seat back a foot, and he wouldn't notice any difference in the sound.
That's right, yeah.
There would be no difference.
That's right.
Because there's no interactions going on. Oh. All right. Lastly, Rob has the Sierra Horizon Rows in the front of his room, right?
I do. That's correct.
How close to the wall are you able to put them? You are physically able to put them on the wall if you actually want to. That's right. They are
front ported. Yeah. So I could push them.
I didn't really know that. I'm just saying that you could shove them, you could staple them to the wall if you wanted to.
Well, not quite. They have binding posts that stick out in the back, so they can't be flush mounted. But no, I mean, like most speakers, I try to get them a bit away from the back wall, and I have some acoustic absorption behind my speakers. I have them because I have a teeny tiny little room. They're only about 1.5 feet off that back wall right now, and that's fine. I bass manage them. I have multi-Q XT32, so it is able to EQ out if there's a little bit of bass emphasis by having them closer to the wall. But I mean, they will function just fine with as little as about 3 inches from that back wall. You will just get some bass boost. It's unavoidable. It's a boundary gain effect. But yeah, there's no issue having them that close to the wall. They will function just fine, and a little bit of EQ can take out the boundary gain effect.
Yeah. All right. Josh on Facebook was amazed to hear me slam Sulk sound speakers on the last podcast. John says it was my review of the Veracity HT2 TLs. By the way, I totally forgot I did that review. That pushed him into purchasing them. He doesn't regret the decision one bit. So why does Tom hate Sulk now? What? What did I say? Did I hate them?
You were talking about Gene's whole thing where he managed to explode them.
He did explode them. He exploded them a couple of times.
Yeah.
Like, they kept sending him new drivers, and he just kept burning them up. That was the only thing I said. I said, don't put them in a big room. I stand by that review. That those were amazing, according to what I just said. It says right here that they are amazing. What does it say? Hold on. It says impeccable finish, authoritative, impactful bass, which is completely pointless, but whatever. Crystal clear highs, which is not completely pointless. Thank you very much. Top quality components. And there's nothing even really all that negative on here. Pricey, funky, non-spikes.
Well, that's why he was surprised it was a positive review. He bought them because of it. And now you're saying, don't buy Sulk sound. Well, that's
I did not say that. I said, don't buy Sulks if you're going to put them in a massive room, because I don't trust that they're not going to burn up. In my room, they're fine. I think Clint still has those Song Towers someplace. I think I saw them recently, and they sound great. They still sound great. I still love those speakers. So, you know, it's okay for me to point out that something has
a limitation,
deficiencies here and there. I mean, I have children. I'm pointing out their deficiencies all the damn time. Doesn't mean I don't love them. So, you know, don't, Josh, you made a good purchase. I wish I had your speakers. How about that? How you feel about that? I have the Veris Grand speakers. I wish I had yours.
It's the internet. 1 or 10, 1 or 10, 0 or 10.
That's
all it can
it's
be.
just, and you know what? And at that time I did that review, I did not know that you could burn up those speakers because I never had to get them loud enough in my room to do that. Gene, on the other hand, is sitting like 25 feet away from his speakers or something. That room's freaking huge, right? And it's treated like up the wazoo.
Right.
So there's no sound reinforcement from the walls going on. No, but very little. And of course, in his room, they had to work a lot harder. And he's got it plugged into monoblock, God knows what's. And they melt down. That's what happens. But if you're not in that room, and I'm not in that room, I'm never going to be in that room. It's not going to be a problem. So fear not, Josh. I stand by my review, and I still think those are very good speakers. Galen. In April, Galen's son got an F in math. It's terrible, Galen. I hope you caned him. That's what he deserves.
Geez.
Caning? Is that the proper?
To me, that's I didn't turn in the project. That's how you get an F.
That's how you get an F. I just flat out said, nope, not doing it. I'm good. Thank you. I'm sitting in the back here playing on my iPhone. All of my friends who have given their kids phones have seen a dramatic dip in their grades.
Yeah.
Right afterwards.
I can see that.
And then they take their phones away and they get their grades back up, and then they strike that equal balance. So it takes this sort of like they get the grades up to get the phones, and then they get the phones and the grades go down, and then they have to take them away. Okay. Anyways, Galen told him if he got his math grades up to an A by the end of the term, which is right now, he would buy him an Xbox. Well, apparently that was motivation enough, so he got an A, and now Galen is buying an Xbox. Not being much of a gamer outside of a few Wii games. Oh, casual. Galen isn't sure. I never had the opportunity to call somebody casual before. That was very nice. I haven't played the video game. The last time I played a video game was with you. Isn't sure what he should be looking at buying. So what device do we have? His son is elementary school age.
Well, he probably already bought it because he emailed us this like last week.
I know. I'm sorry. It's my fault.
No, because it was going to be on this week's podcast anyway. Microsoft just dropped the prices on Xbox One consoles, so you're probably still within the return window if you already bought it, because they just dropped everything by $50, and that's like a permanent price cut. Best Buy right now is showing it as a sale, but they said no, that's like a permanent price cut. So they have a gazillion different bundles. Most of them have games that I would not say are appropriate for an elementary school.
Assassin's Creed. I'm sure that's a Doom
Gears
bundle.
Of War,
Halo. None of those.
Even the Tomb Raider games, the current ones are pretty darn gory.
Yeah.
So they have one that's a Lego game.
That's the one you want. Go with that.
Might as well get that because that's perfectly age appropriate, and they're all the same price. So you might as well get a free game that's appropriate. They do have one that lets you pick which game, but the only game you can pick that I would say is appropriate is Rare Replay, which is a cheap game anyway. So you're kind of not getting full value.
Yeah, it's like $20. Isn't it like $20? I thought it was like
yeah. So I would say get the Lego game bundle. They're now $300. So if you paid $350 last week, return it and get back the one that's now $300, or get Best Buy to give you a $50 gift card or something. But yeah, that's the one to go for in my opinion.
And I can't really get behind buying an Xbox 360 right now.
Because the Xbox One is now backwards compatible with Xbox 360 games.
Not all the games.
Well, not every game, but it's pretty good. There are rumors that Microsoft, just like Sony, will be releasing an update for a more powerful one to run VR, because Microsoft and Oculus are pretty buddy-buddy. Like the Oculus Rift comes with a Xbox One controller. That's the controller it comes with. So there's basically all the rumors that they're working behind the scenes to release an Xbox Scorpio. That's the code name, which will have an upgraded GPU just like the PlayStation 4K might. So yeah, that's in the rumor mill. But anyway, for right now, get the Lego bundle.
David over on Facebook. Unfortunately, to know how well an SVS PC12 NSD, I've got one of those. I've got two of those. Cylinder sub will cope with getting wet. I'm going to go with not well. Generally speaking, they are not waterproof in any way, shape, or form.
They're not meant to be submerged in water. That is,
No. He accidentally left a window open during a storm, and the plate amplifier got, quote, pretty wet, unquote. I would call that pretty broken, probably. Anyways, water might have also gotten to the top port. It wasn't plugged in. Can you plug those in?
No, he's saying the electrical wasn't plugged in at the time, which is
Oh,
definitely
okay.
your friend. Definitely
Oh,
your
yeah.
friend in this case.
All right, it wasn't plugged in. That's good. So,
Yeah.
and he doesn't have to use it right away, so there's plenty of time to let it dry out. But any advice?
Let it dry out.
Let it dry out.
It actually should. Well, yeah. I mean, the reason water and electrical devices don't mix is because water can act as a conductor.
Exactly.
And
Well,
the reason
actually,
water,
that's not true.
not
but
pure
yes.
water
Not
with
distilled.
impurities in it.
Yeah, which is all water that we deal with on the majority.
That's right.
Distilled water will not conduct electricity. But go on.
Yeah, so the issue is, if something's functioning and you pour water that has impurities in it and it acts as a conductor, that will fry it. Now, this wasn't plugged into electrical, so if you just let it dry out, it's probably fine. What you'd be worried about is residue. Like, this is storm water. It should be fairly pure unless your air is really polluted.
Well, I mean, technically, the way rain forms is by dust getting into clouds, and the dust allows the raindrops to form on top of it. So it should be a little bit dirty, but maybe just not enough. That's the hope.
I mean, get in touch with SVS because they are super helpful with their customer service. If they have any suggestions about cleaning it out before turning it back on again for the first time, but honestly, letting it dry out, it's probably fine. And yeah, if
I
there's
would take
obvious
that plate amp off, and I would go in there with one of those air compressor things.
and just get rid of any residue.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
That's right.
And then I would worry about rust on the driver and the magnets and everything. I would worry about all that. So maybe it's fine. Let us know. Bob on Twitter needs a 7.2.4 capable processor. What do we recommend? How about a Marantz receiver?
Yes, SR7010.
That's what I would go with.
Yep.
Done.
Now, he made it pretty clear to me he wants a pre-pro. I guess he wants
Marantz
those XLR
pre-pro thingy.
Then the Marantz AV7702 Mark II, which is the SR7010, just with amplifiers taken out and XLR inputs put in.
Which are not balanced, by the way. They just look balanced from a distance.
Well, I mean, it is a balanced signal going out of those XLRs. It's just created at the very final stage. It's not within the...
It's not fully balanced within all the electronics.
Yeah, there's really not much reason to pay more because that thing's got every feature you could want. So that's the one.
And it's the same box. It's the same box.
Oh yeah, it's as the SR7010. It's
the same.
Everything is the same. It just doesn't have
the
amps.
You're just literally
and it has XLRs.
Not paying them for the amps.
That's right. They're the same price, which is a good price.
Whatever.
That's the one.
All right. He knows that on Amazon, some Atmos processors have Atmos listed as upgradable. Does that mean they won't do Atmos out of the box?
Well, one, I saw this on that AV7702 Mark II, which means Amazon specs are just wrong because it has Atmos out of the box. But there were, I know what happened here. Amazon did a copy-paste job. Yeah. Because there were that first generation of Atmos processors, some of them needed a firmware update to get Atmos functioning. And those were the ones that weren't upgradable to DTS-X at all. Those did exist. Amazon clearly just copy-pasted. That is not the case with the AV7702 Mark II. It has Atmos out of the box. It doesn't have DTS-X out of the box, but the firmware update that adds DTS-X is available now, and it will come up automatically as soon as you connect that receiver to your network and it has internet access. It will say, there's an update available. Would you like it? And it's free, so yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nick. It was nice that we didn't have to really go through and give any sort of explanation for any of that. Which one do you get? This is it. See you later. If you want to know why, the why is it's the best one out there for the least amount of money. There you go. Unless you want to spend like 30 grand on a turn-off. Isn't that what it is? 30 grand?
Altitude 32, sure. Yeah. No,
yeah. All right. Nick has some clarification for our support pole confusion.
Yes, I have a picture. I'll get that up here in just a second. Right.
The poles are vertical I-beams. Two are hidden in the false closet and one right under the center of the theater area.
So here's the support pole right in the middle of his little area there. This is the guy who was going to build a wall to block.
Oh, that support pole is right there. Okay.
Yeah, support pole right there in the middle of the room.
Yeah, okay.
Can't move that sucker.
Can't move it. All right. It prevents placing the surround back speakers any farther back because the beam would be directly in front of the right rear speaker.
Yeah, now, so he's very concerned that this I-beam that is standing vertically is going to block some of the sound from his right surround back speaker, which is not entirely untrue, but at the same time, a heck of a lot of sound is going to wrap right around something as skinny as an I-beam.
Yeah, dude, I don't know that I would worry about this as much as you're worried about this thing.
Yeah, I'm like so not worried. Now, The other part of it is I don't know what the backspace of this room is planning to be used for. Maybe he doesn't want to hang speakers from the ceiling or something like that. There could be other reasons why he wants to put them there, but I wouldn't be terribly concerned about that support pole being a huge barrier to sound.
No, you can move those speakers back.
Yeah.
When he says IMAX, he mostly means 16:9 Blu-ray IMAX stuff like The Dark Knight. Like I said.
Yep.
That's what I said.
Hunger Games, Dark Knight, yeah.
I would not know. I've watched the Hunger Games.
Transformers.
Oh. It's like a PTSD thing going on right now with these movies you're mentioning. All right. The second row is an afterthought, so this is changing the advice we already gave. I don't remember the advice we gave. What advice did
we were saying try and move those surround back speakers back a little bit farther.
And then does not make any difference. I still want you to move them back.
Yeah, in which case, again, I would shift the Atmos speakers that he has suggested, top fronts and top middles, which is not a configuration you could have anyway. If he left them where they'd already have to go those top middles and front heights. But I would shift them all back a little bit so that I could have top fronts and top rears in this setup. Yeah, so honestly, advice stays the same, and don't worry so much about that vertical pole blocking sound.
Also, he's confused about how lens shift works. Suppose he was to mount the projector 1 foot left of center horizontally on the screen.
Sure.
1 whole foot. I don't even think that you would know this. You would need lens shift for that. I think you just turn it a little bit. Would higher end projectors from Epson, Sony, or JVC with horizontal lens shift be able to bring it back to centered?
Absolutely, yes.
Dude, I don't even know why you're saying higher end projectors. Like any projector that has lens shift of any kind would be able to bring a 1 foot.
The ranges do vary, especially on DLP projectors. Some of them have very little lens shift. A lot of DLP projectors have no horizontal lens shift at all. But on these ones, you can literally put it even with the left or right side of the screen itself. Right? So you could move it all the way over to even with the left side of the screen and still shoot it onto the screen where it is using lens shift. So the way lens shift works, I think of it like a variable periscope, right? So like a periscope lets you sit down here and then have the lens up above you and you're able to see that thing. And if you could vary the length of that periscope, that's more or less what lens shift is doing in both directions. So it doesn't alter the shape of the image at all. It just changes the relative position of where the light is coming out versus where the light hits on the wall. And that's exactly what it's for, is so you can move it over, be off center, and still get a perfectly squared image.
I don't even think I'd be worried about 1 foot anyways, to be honest with you. 1 foot would be close enough.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the amount of keystoning that would occur.
I mean, you got the lens shift, you might as well use it.
Yeah, you could use. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying if 1 foot would be close enough to the center of the screen. Like mine's dead center, and whatever. All right. You saw that image up? You do.
I'm back to me.
All right. Adriano. Around 5 years ago, Impulse purchased some JBL Pro Series speakers and QSC amps from a post-production house when they were decommissioning one of their Dolby digital mixing suites.
I was going to say, those go in actual theaters. Yeah. Those things, yes.
He shoehorned them into his parents' already constructed by him dedicated theater. He didn't give it much thought at the time, being impressed by the sheer size of the speakers themselves. Obviously, these JBL Pro speakers are built and designed to create the required SPLs for large venues. Apart from wasting their SPL potential, is there any downside to using them in a room much smaller than what they were designed for? Is there a problem sitting closer to these than was intended? Are they built purely for efficiency and therefore perform worse in other aspects?
So I'm throwing up some images here. They are large, these speakers. Here's another image. This is behind,
look at the horns.
Behind the acoustically transparent screen. That's what's going on. That's the center speaker that's on.
That's the center speaker?
That's the center speaker behind an acoustically transparent screen that goes in front of that acoustically transparent wall there. So these are big speakers. Big with huge horns.
So he actually toes out the left and the right speakers rather than...
It could be, yeah. And,
what it looks like.
And these are listed at 101 dB efficiency with 1 watt. Now, in a full-size movie theater, you need that kind of thing. You need that.
Goodness. And he's got external amps for him because,
he's got these QSC amps, yeah. Which are like 300 watt per channel amps, yeah.
Oh, clearly he needs this power. Honestly, dude, there is, to my mind, the thing I'd be worried about is why do they have, what do they have to compensate for in a theater, a massive size theater that you do not have in your theater?
With lots of absorptive people in it.
That's right. They are worried about the high end being absorbed and not being able to be heard. And, somewhat the bass, but really it's the high end. And that is what they're worried about. So I would worry about these speakers being bright. That's what I would worry about.
This comes up on the opposite end when people talk about using speakers that are designed for near field in regular sized home theater. And it's not that something can't have, linear flat frequency response when you're measuring it from 1 meter away. It's that things that are designed specifically for near field, there's a thing called like total sound power, right? Which is when you take a full spinorama measurement, like the 72 measurements they take at the NRC, and you get all the sound energy that comes out throughout the whole frequency spectrum. And what they tend to do is knock down the treble energy when the speakers are intended to be very close to you. And they tend to boost that when the speakers are meant to be really far away from you in a really big room, because the bass energy is almost always, it is always omnidirectional. It wraps right around the speaker. That means it bounces off of every surface. So its total sound energy in the bass is always higher than in the treble. When the speaker is going to be really far away in a really big room with not a lot of reinforcement, they have to boost the treble output. So speakers like this are designed to have more treble energy coming out of them. Now that can be somewhat compensated for with equalization. You've probably had to. Those QSC amps, I don't know them to have a super quiet noise floor. So
they usually have fans.
I'm betting you can hear some hiss coming from this system when it's sitting idle. To me, that's really the only drawback. There isn't a huge reason you can't use these speakers in this room. You definitely don't need their output capabilities. You know that. I mean, it's not like he thinks he does. You're probably using like...
out with magnepans. That's what you should do.
Probably using like 0.05 of a watt to drive these things.
That's during peaks.
Yeah, but I mean, there's no real reason you really can't use these. The only thing I'd be concerned about is the noise floor, which has more to do with the amps than it does with the speakers.
The question let's go to his next question here. It says he asked it both out of curiosity because he has someone offering to buy the entire system for the same price he paid 5 years ago, which is about $7,000. Should he take the cash and buy his parents something else? Should he sell the speakers and keep the amps? Should he just leave everything as is?
Yeah, that's a tough. I mean, basically, what you're saying is, what could he get for $7,000, right?
Because it sounds like they're going to take the kit and caboodle. They're taking all of it.
Yeah, the amps and the 7 speakers. So if he had $7,000 to spend, could he get something that sounds significantly better than what he has right now? That's really the question, right? And that's a really tough call. Honestly, if your parents have gotten used to this kind of dynamic sound,
touch that with a 10-foot pole. I honestly, dude, if your parents are happy with what they've got, don't rock the boat, because
on the
everything
other hand,
is going to be negative. Anything that they hear that doesn't sound exactly the same as what they're used to is going to be negative.
Yeah, and on the other hand, if they're constantly telling you, I really hate that I can hear this hiss every time I turn on the system, if that's a complaint that they're telling you, then yes, you can improve upon that. by altering this setup, and certainly you can
you should sell the amps and just get a receiver that has multi-QXT32, and it will wipe out any of that top end.
Maybe like an ATI or an Outlaw Audio.
If you're really worried, right? if you're worried about the hiss, but I'm not sure you're going to hear that much hiss from a Marantz or a Denon, anyways.
With these speakers, you might.
You might.
So I would.
It can't be worse than what you're going to hear from the QSCs, which are not meant.
I would get like Outlaws. I would get like Outlaws 75 watt per channel one. Like they have a 7x75 watt one. I get that because you don't need the wattage with these speakers. What you want is the super quiet noise floor. So that I might go for. But the speakers themselves, I mean, they are fine. You absolutely are not using their full capabilities even remotely close. But yeah, if they're used to that sound, they probably like it. So yeah, that's where I'd fall.
Don't rock the boat, dude.
Yeah.
Bill, this is the stumper. Which one was he? The hiss guy or
no? He was the subwoofer
Roku thump guy. Okay,
subwoofer thump.
Is in need of outdoor speakers. At his previous house, he had some mid-level paradigms, which he thought sounded great for outdoor speakers, but they stayed They stayed with the house when he sold it a couple of years ago. At the new house, there are some low-end Niles, which seemed okay, okay at first, but now he's so over them. They're small, have no bass, and break up at any volume. He's willing to spend around 400 or so, but if you could get away with only 250, that'd be even better. What do we advise? We always advise like Yamahas, because their outdoor speakers are very good.
Yes.
And you can get the big ones, which have pretty good bass. And I would not describe the Yamahas my parents had, which I don't think were the biggest ones. I think they're the mid-level ones, as breaking up at all. But
no, they never really,
good. They never really blasted them, but it's outdoor speakers. You don't blast them anyways.
I forgot to put my camera back on me, but there I am. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yamahas, if you want to get the big 8-inch driver models, which will have pretty good, darn good bass for an outdoor speaker, those are the NSAW992s. They do go for just under $400 a pair on Amazon right now, so they fit within that budget if you want to go. The ones I recommend to most people are the 592s. They're the 6.5-inch driver version, because they're like $250 or something like that on Amazon per pair. So quite affordable, quite reasonable. Yeah. And it's really just a matter of how much louder and how much more bass you want to go from a 6.5-inch driver to an 8-inch, but they both fit your budget.
And I think people at some point are going to be like, you always recommend the same outdoor speakers. Like, yeah, you know why? Because who cares? I mean, let's be honest. These are good. I know they're good.
They're solid. They're actually weatherproof. They're
weatherproof. I'm not worried about some squirrel setting up a nest in them. They sound okay, and they're outdoors. What else? I mean, what else are you looking for here? Good with the sound. Couldn't we find something with better sound quality? Yeah, anything that's inside will have a better sound, because it's not, you're not looking. You know what you should do is take those other speakers that the other guy has, and from the theater, you put those outside with the QSC amps. You'll be able to blow the doors off of your neighbor's house.
That's right.
Updates on the discounted focals. He asked the hi-fi store if you could demo them at home, and they were happy to let him try them for a week. Nice. After listening to the focals alone and comparing them to Bill's Sierra 2s in both his room and his friend's room for a few days, both Bill and his friend thought the focals sounded like great speakers, but felt that the Sierra sounded a little less full when playing without a sub. But the Sierra 2s had the edge over the focals in every other regard, meaning more bass from the focals, but everything else was for.
And once you have that subwoofer integrated, that problem goes away.
That's right. Yeah. He also compared the focals to his paradigms and found he preferred the imaging of the paradigms. There you go.
Okay.
The
so
focals
in one respect, which is what I was mentioning, right? You get to this sort of level of speaker, and it's like they do this one thing a little bit better, but they do other things a little bit not as well, to personal preference, right?
So his conclusion is the focals are excellent speakers, but lost out in preference to the Sierras. As a result, Bill's friend has ordered a pair of Sierra Towers with the raw upgrade. We'll be pairing them with at least one SVS SP2000.
Well, there you go. And what's nice about this is you now know for sure. For your own preferences, you're not questioning, whether you're relying on someone else's opinion. I don't think either of them think I was way out to lunch with my opinions of them. So to me, I'm happy. It all adds up.
We're at the time-wise. Went way too long last week. Everett would like us to lay out a step-by-step guide to getting the most out of running Odyssey. No. No, we're not going to do that, because that's been done already. Everett, check out the link on our podcast notes.
avrant.com. Come to avrant.com. We have links for the things that we talk about, products that we recommend.
That's from the AV Forums guy, right?
AV Forums, yeah. He has a very good guide for running Odyssey. Now, I just wanted to mention the beginning and end, which isn't covered by this video. So the beginning part is the subwoofer setup. And in that subwoofer setup, all you're really worried about is using what Odyssey tells you to do, which is they throw up a thing on screen and says, adjust the volume dial on the back of the subwoofer itself until the readout on screen says 75 dB. Those instructions are given by Odyssey directly, so it's certainly not like a confusing step, but that's just not covered in the video, so I just wanted to mention it.
That's because it's already covered in the thing.
In the setup itself, yeah. And then at the very end of the Odyssey setup process, which they don't go into in the video, I would say check all the settings that are made, and this is not Odyssey's fault. This is on the manufacturer. The manufacturer is the one who decides whether to call the speakers large or small and where to set the crossover point. That is not Odyssey doing that, but so I just want to, take the blame off of them. But you want to double check that. You want to always have all of the speakers set to small. The AV receiver manufacturer might choose to call some of them large. So manually set them all to small if it is called any of them large. And if any of the crossover frequencies are set lower than 80 hertz, move them up to 80 hertz. If it's set a crossover frequency to like 90 or 100 or 120, it's probably a good idea to leave it there, because that probably means that that really is as low as that speaker could play. But if it's set anything to like, 60 or 50 hertz as the crossover, move that up to 80. Turn dynamic EQ on, turn dynamic volume off.
Like all the way off. Like
and
if you could delete it,
that's
you
right.
can do that too.
And then leave it up to your preference. Try both the Odyssey reference, sometimes called movie curve, and the Odyssey flat, sometimes called music curve. That you can toggle back and forth between those two. You don't have to do a full setup or anything to switch between those two, and it's a matter of preference which one you like. So,
and when you get to the point where it says, "Do you want to save or go look at other stuff?" Hit save.
Yes.
Hit save.
Yes.
Because if you don't hit save and you accidentally press back, you have to do it all again. It's awful. Especially when you're doing it and your wife's waiting in another room so you can start the
Yeah,
movie.
and the last good tip I have is, again, this is on the AV receiver side of things, so not every receiver model will have this capability. But if you're able to use a network connection to go into the menu, this you can certainly do on like Denon and Marantz's. You just look up the IP address of the AV receiver itself, which is listed in the menu. You go to the network portion of the menu, and it will have the AV receiver's own IP address listed there. You just type that IP address into any web browser. It will bring up the network menu, and you have the option in there to save all the settings for your AV receiver, which means now there's a save file on your computer, and now you can load those settings back up. So that's a great thing if you ever need to reset your processor, or you just want to run Odyssey multiple times and have different setups. You can save and load using that network feature.
That's right. All right. Can we get through Ian? I think we can get through
so.
Ian.
Yeah.
Ian's got a short one. It's a lot of words, but it's a short question. The answer is pretty much, I'm going to agree with Ian. Anyways, he wants to upgrade his computer speakers. Currently, he has the Klipsch Pro Media THX 2.1 system.
Mm-hmm.
It has worked well for many years, and he's even done some custom repairs to keep them going. But he'd like to move on to some better speakers that are more like monitors, preferably with the ability to connect to sub. He has a DefTech SuperCube 3 he can use.
Mm-hmm.
All right. He listens to music all day at his desk, so he likes something fairly neutral sounding that will be good both with music and watching TV/movies. His max budget is $800, but $500 would be better if possible. He's looked at the Audio Engine A5 Plus speakers and they just released some new higher end ones that look pretty cool. Klipsch has released their R15 PMs, and he's always loved the look of the Klipsch reference speakers. And his current Klipsch speakers are Klipsch, which he already mentioned. Mm-hmm. He's also heard us talk about Emotiva and KRK, which both seem good to him. What do we suggest? Wait a second. I thought the Emotiva ones, they have powered ones, but they have powered, or they have not?
They are self-powered monitors. Yeah, they have self-powered monitors. They're not really computer speakers. They're self-powered monitors.
Yeah, I do like the KRKs a lot, to be honest with you. I have moved them to a friend's house. They seem like the kind of, like when people say, well, why can't I use them in my home theater? I'm like, so the KRKs you kind of can, because they're that the ones I had, I think, were the 6s. There might have been the 5. I think there were 6s, which means they have a 6-inch driver woofer in there, and the 12-inch sub that goes with it. But you already have the sub kind of worked out. I really like those speakers. One of them just busted. I don't know what happened to it. I think it got shot by lightning or something. But one of them just busted. It's been at my friend's house for a long time. But even just with one speaker, it still sounds pretty good.
I mean, to me, the bigger concern is the connection path.
Yes.
Because like the Klipsch ones that he has, they are computer speakers, which means they take a regular 3.5 millimeter stereo plug, analog stereo plug, that actually plugs into a little control unit. The little control unit goes directly into the subwoofer, and then both speakers plug into the subwoofer, right? Which is the way that's the way a lot of computer speakers are set up.
Well, the audio engines plug directly into your headphone outlet if you want them to.
Yeah, or your 3.5 millimeter line out, right? Yeah. So the audio engines, to me, make a lot of sense because they have, from the audio engine speaker itself, they then have line outputs that you can run to your subwoofer.
Right.
So to me, the connection path on the Audio Engine A5 Pluses makes a lot of sense. Now, the new HD6s that they have, they're basically the A5 Pluses as the speaker part goes. They just added Bluetooth and a DAC to them. So that you don't really need those. That's not really necessary.
You're never going to use Bluetooth.
So
that's why I talked about Bluetooth earlier. It's foreshadowing.
So I'd say the A5 Pluses are a really good choice. They make connecting your subwoofer that you already have quite easy. You'd be using the crossover dial on the subwoofer itself to tune it in, because it's not like the A5s give you a crossover, but at least the connection path is easy. With ones like the KRKs, I mean, or the Emotivas, or what I was going to mention, the other ones are like the JBL Pro LSR 305s, which get a lot of very positive reviews as far as the sound quality goes. But all of those are basically studio monitors. They're self-powered monitors. So like in the case of the JBL Pros, you'd actually need a 3.5 millimeter to, if you can get one that goes directly to dual XLR or a dual TRS, which is a rare.
That's what I bought the XLR. You can get it for mono price.
Yeah. So and you probably needed those for the KRKs, right?
Yes, the KRKs. That's what I didn't need them.
But then the issue from there is that then to connect a subwoofer, you need to split the output from that first 3.5 millimeter stereo coming out of the computer so that you can send a full range audio signal to the studio monitors and a full range signal to the subwoofer.
Not the KRKs.
The KRKs have an output?
They have an output. Yeah.
Well, the JBL Pros do not. So my vote is for the audio engines, I got to be honest.
Audio engines be very easy. They are, remember, they're going to be like a small little speaker. They're not going to be huge.
Yeah.
The KRKs are going to be a full size.
The A5 Pluses are decent sized. They're not tiny.
Yeah, I'm not going to say they're, but the
KRKs are pretty big. Yeah.
They are massive. They are a full size bookshelf speaker. They are not that much smaller than the Emotiva Prime bookshelves. They are not that much smaller than them. So think about size before you go into this, for sure. The audio engines are just, will be able to fit reasonably on a desk. Whereas these other things, you're like, where am I going to put these things? Which is kind of what ended up happening with me. I actually had stands on either side of my desk when I first got them, because I couldn't fit them on my desk because of the printer and everything else. Later on, I was able to adjust it. But yeah, it ends up being a thing, dude. So yeah, these are all good options. Everything that's been said have been good options. We're not going to get through Brian.
Even though it's not really a question, but...
I know, but that's a lot of words.
It is.
We're going to do a different day. So we have Brian R. Monis.
It's Mwani. Mwani.
What?
We've heard from Mwani before.
Mwani. Oh, that's right. I do remember Mwani. Yeah. Okay. And Infinite Gary and John W. Yep. Which I guess we can answer John right now if we wanted to, but we're not going to. All right. So if you haven't heard your name and you didn't ask the question on Monday or Tuesday, the Monday questions get on.
Yeah, we did have some questions come in today, so but
we will get to you. But these questions will all be addressed next week. All right. I have fun. I'm so tired. I can't remember what I'm supposed to say. All right, so
contact info.
That's right. If you want to get your question onto this podcast, the podcast that does answer your AV and home theater questions, all you got to do is ask. I think we proved
that today.
Maybe there is some empirical evidence, though. More testing needs to be done. You can get your question on the podcast by emailing question@avrant.com. CC Rob at avrant.com and Tom at avrant.com as well. Go to www.avrant.com for our podcast page where you can leave a comment or a PayPal donation. And just let us know how that you supported the podcast to become a listener of the week. You can go to facebook.com/avrantpodcast. Twitter is @FirstReflect for Rob, at @avrant_Tom for me, and @Austen Pond for our producer, Austen. Austin's got a podcast of his own called We Watch Movies. That podcast is about program evaluation. When we talk about program evaluation, we're not talking about TV programs. We're talking about social programs like, outreach things. So a lot of quantitative and qualitative methodologies they talk about all the time. How to best study the efficacy of these different social programs. It's got a small but rabid listener base, mostly based in Southern California, where all these people live and work.
Clearly why they called it We Watch Movies.
Clearly. We want to thank our listeners of the week, Andy and Derek, for their donations. Thank you, Andy and Derek.
Andy, Derek, thank you very much. Very much appreciated.
Fabricio for talking us up to SVS, which I believe that is the first time they've ever heard our name.
No, that's good. And hopefully I tweeted out about SVS's Memorial Day outlet sale. It
I
was
saw that.
their outlet store sale. So I think that's over now because Memorial Day is over now. But yeah.
Sometimes they extend these things. So if you're hearing this now for the first time.
That's right.
All right. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Mantry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.